Night, 1974. Liu Family Village, Spring City. Slap. You insolent girl. How dare you run away? You must be tired of living. Do you think screaming will get anyone to come to your aid? A burning pain spread across Shi Jingyue's cheek. Her hair was seized and pulled brutally. Her eyelids trembled violently. She fought to wake up yet felt trapped in a swamp, unable to break free. The man's vicious curses echoed in her ears. Don't you still think you're some young lady from the city? Let me tell you, once you step foot in my house, you will never escape. Why not settle down and marry my younger brother? You brought this on yourself. We've been far too lenient with you. So, what if the villagers heard your cries? I have nothing to fear. I'll confront them all and break your spirit right in front of everyone. The sound of him swallowing hard made Shi Jingyue's skin crawl, and boundless anger welled up inside her. How long had it been since anyone dared speak to her like this? I've had my eye on you from the very first moment I saw you. Fair-skinned and delicate, like a celestial maiden. It's such a waste you were meant only for my foolish brother. Ha ha, don't blame me. This is all your own fault. If you hadn't tried to run, you would only belong to my brother. But now, ha ha ha. The man paid no notice that Shi Jingyue's fingers trembled faintly. His malicious, unbridled laughter buzzed like flies, accompanied by the rustle of him removing his clothes. He licked his lips, advancing toward Shi Jingyue, who lay motionless on the ground, seemingly unconscious. His greedy, unblinking gaze never left her. So pale, so soft. Truly a city girl through and through. Shameless words reverberated within the cramped, oppressive cellar. His breathing grew heavy. He lunged forward like a wild beast, reaching out to tear at her clothing. A pity you've passed out. It would be far more interesting if you were awake, he muttered in disappointment. Yet the thought of future opportunities brought a knowing smirk to his face. Just as his foul face was about to draw near to hers, everything shifted in an instant. Shi Jingyue, who had appeared lifeless, suddenly snapped her eyes open. All traces of timidity and terror vanished completely. A cold glint flashed in her stare. The man met her gaze abruptly. Her eyes, hardened as though she had walked through mountains of corpses and seas of blood, sent a jolt of terror through him, and he flinched instinctively. A strange sense of foreboding washed over him. Something was different. But consumed by recklessness, he shook off the unsettling sensation. A mocking grin tugged at his mouth. He stretched a hand toward her face as if teasing a kitten. Well, look who's awake. That's perfect. I'll make sure you learn your lesson today. Shi Jingyue frowned, scanning her surroundings, momentarily confused. She had expected troublemakers from her base. This place, however, looked nothing like the apocalyptic wasteland she knew. Come now. Don't fight me, and things won't turn ugly. The vulgar words drifted toward her once more. Go to hell. You're begging to die. Shi Jingyue locked her eyes on his reaching hand, overcome with revulsion and overwhelming killing intent. A cold smirk crossed her face. In the next heartbeat, she clamped onto his wrist without hesitation and twisted it ruthlessly, as if handling a worthless object. Crack. The sound of bone snapping cut through the air. The smile froze on the man's face. He doubled over in agony, clutching his broken wrist, his complexion draining pale. Before his scream could fully escape, Shi Jingyue drove her boot viciously toward his lower body. Her movements were swift and merciless. The man realized her intention in a split second and tried to shield himself, but he was far too slow. Crack! A pained groan burst from him. He crumpled to the ground, twisting in agony, his vision swimming. Aya! He lurched toward her, overwhelmed by crippling pain, screaming at the top of his lungs. Quiet! Shi Jingyue wrinkled her nose in disgust. The moment he stumbled toward her, she curled her fingers into claws and lunged for his throat. She moved faster than lightning. The man was seized by the neck in an instant, all screams strangled in his throat. Thud! Shi Jingyue shoved him hard against the earthen wall. Agony from his fractured wrist and crippling injury racked his body, compounded by the iron grip around his neck and the brutal impact against his back. Any one of these wounds would be torture enough. To endure all at once was unbearable. The man felt as though his soul might tear free. Cold sweat streamed down his forehead. His muscles rigid, bloodshot eyes blazing with hatred and disbelief. He could not make a sound, only gurgle hoarsely. He stared at her with venomous rage. Let go of me. He forced the words out through his constricted throat. How dare you, Slap? Slap. Shi Jingyue struck him twice without hesitation. You still dare glare at me. Are you truly eager to die? Do you believe I won't tear your eyes out? You dare threaten me? Shi Jingwei held his gaze for a long moment. She caught the scent of sweet potatoes mixed with soil in the cellar. And countless fragmented memories flooded her mind. Her eyes suddenly widened. Unprecedented excitement stirred the heart that had grown cold after 10 years of struggling to survive in the apocalypse. It was real. It was truly real. She had transmigrated into a novel. She had escaped the brutal apocalypse and arrived in the era novel she had casually read not long ago. One she had complained about before sleeping. The day after she finished the book, a traitor emerged within her base. When she opened her eyes, she was surrounded by corpses and zombies. She fought alongside her companions against the zombie emperor. In her final moments, she heard the original owner's voice. Please. I beg you, avenge me. Help me flee this mountain village. Protect my family. This body is yours. The original owner's desperate plea echoed clearly. She had dismissed it as a dying hallucination. After all, only a day earlier, she had ranted about how poorly written this novel was. Yet, it was not a fantasy. Joy faded quickly. Recalling the original owner's hopeless, tearful eyes, Shi Jingyue's gaze turned dangerous. The original owner shared her name, Shi Jingwei. She was 19 years old. In the novel, her father was a regiment commander in the military, and her mother was a well-known capitalist from Shanghai with revolutionary ties. By all rights, she ought to have grown up cherished and sheltered, yet fate had cruelly intervened. 2 months prior, the original owner's parents' adopted daughter, Shi, the novel's female lead, had invited her out shopping. The original owner had gone happily, unaware it marked the start of her nightmare. Pure and kind-hearted, even though her parents showered affection on Shi, she never harbored resentment. She always shared her belongings with her elder sister willingly. She never suspected that the sister she trusted harbored deep malice. Shi seethed with jealousy, convinced their parents favored their biological daughter. Shi Jingwei had a childhood engagement to a man of outstanding background. Shi believed that if the original owner disappeared, all her parents' affection and her fiancé's attention would belong solely to her. When her gambling uncle came asking for money, Shi colluded with him and sold the original owner for merely 50 yuan. For 2 months, the girl was transported from place to place until she ended up trapped in this remote mountain village. She was bought by Lu Ergu of Lu family village. Lu Erga had 2 sons. His younger son suffered from an intellectual disability, and no woman would agree to marry him. That was why he had dared to secretly purchase the original owner, planning to force her to wed his foolish son. Terrified by the boy's constant drooling and messy habits, the original owner begged the family to release her, promising she could pay them a great sum of money. Lu Ergu ignored her pleas. He hoped she would bear his family children as soon as possible, believing a child would tie her down, and force her to care for his disabled son and serve the whole family. As the disabled boy moved toward her under his father and elder brother's orders, the original owner tricked him into loosening his restraints. She bit his hand hard. When he cried out and let go, she grabbed a wooden stool and knocked him unconscious, then fled. She ran as fast as she could, shouting for help, hoping to draw the villagers' attention. But night had fallen, and she did not know the layout of the village. She ran blindly. The disabled boy's home sat on the lower stretch of the village, with only a few scattered neighboring households far apart. Her feet blistered before she finally spotted lamplight from other cottages. She sprinted toward it desperately. The disabled boy's elder brother, the man now before her, had stepped outside to relieve himself, but quickly noticed her escape and gave chase. Her cries barely carried far before he tackled her to the ground, covered her mouth, and dragged her back to the cellar. Enraged, he beat her violently, slamming her head against the dirt floor. The blow did not kill the original owner instantly, but it triggered her awakening. She realized she existed inside a novel, destined to be a tragic side character with no hope of escape. According to the original plot, her tongue would be cut out, one leg broken. She would be trapped in this cellar forever, exploited and tormented until her death. She died longing for her parents to rescue her, yet she never saw them again. After awakening to the truth, she learned her parents had already been reported by Shi, exiled to a distant region and perished far from home. Even her siblings met terrible ends. Why do such wicked people get to be the heroine? What wrong did my family commit? Was adopting her a mistake? How could she destroy all of us? I refuse to accept this. I want her to pay. I offer my soul and this body. Please help me. The shrill, desperate cry still lingered in Shi Jingyue's mind. She let out a cold breath and pressed a hand to her chest, speaking firmly. Rest assured, I will not spare her. Everyone who harmed you will face justice. I swear on my life. Your parents and siblings are now my family. I will do everything in my power to protect them. She had thought the voice was a figment of her imagination and offered no reply earlier. The moment her vow ended, as if a pact had been sealed, a great weight lifted from the body. Shi Jingyue felt an unseen restraint vanish. This body was truly hers now. She knew the original owner had heard her and found peace. Lu Ergu, what was that screaming we heard a moment ago? A woman calling for help. That's right. I heard it too. She sounded like a high school student. Our village has never had a high school graduate, such an educated girl. Don't do anything reckless. Educated young people are the nation's future. You must not harm her. Her cries were absolutely heartbreaking. Could your family be mistreating her? You 3 men have no wives. There's a widow nearby I could introduce to one of you. Enough of that nonsense. There's nothing untoward going on here. That widow can't bear children. Don't joke about pairing us with her. You're the ones with dirty minds, seeing evil everywhere. The cellar lay directly beneath the family's cottage. Footsteps and suspicious, gossipy voices echoed from above. It was spring plowing season. Villagers had just returned home from work and were eating dinner when they caught fragments of the original owner's shouts. Though her cries were quickly muffled, several people had heard her. Entertainment was scarce in these times, and any commotion sparked village gossip. Many villagers possessed simple, kind hearts. Suspecting someone was being abused, they roused their neighbors and flocked to the house together. You witch, you will never escape. You'd better release me right now and kowtow 1,000 times to beg for mercy. Once my father finishes dealing with these meddling busybodies, he'll kill you. The man, his pain dulling slightly at the sound of voices overhead, glared at Shi Jingyue like a venomous snake. His voice dripped with malice and arrogance. You think gaining a little strength makes you a match for me? Kill me? Make me kowtow 1,000 times. Shi Jingyue let out a quiet laugh and lowered her gaze to him. You're scared now, aren't you? Let me go and do as I say. The man thought his threat had worked and grew cocky. You truly have wild fantasies. Thud. The amusement faded from Shi Jingyue's eyes. She drove her boot into his knee. The man crashed heavily to his knees before her. Before he could recover, she shifted the hand clamped around his throat, seized his hair, and slammed his head against the dirt ground. Thud, thud, thud. The brutal impact of skull against earth rang out. Muffled screams tore from the man's throat. He lay prostrate, forced to stare at Shi Jingyue's shoes. Overwhelming humiliation and terror washed over him. He could scarcely believe it. A grown man forced to kneel before a woman. If word spread, he would never hold his head up again. Damn her. Thud, thud, thud. 5, 6, Shi Jingyue spoke coldly and cruelly. Dread coiled in the man's bones. A chill ran down his spine, and the threat of death made him tremble uncontrollably. He struggled to rise, yet his limbs felt weak and useless. He could not break free. Panic overwhelmed him. What had happened? Was this some kind of haunting? How had she transformed from a timid girl into this ferocious creature? Let me go. He understood fully now. He was powerless beneath her mercy. One wrong move could cost him everything. Shi Jingyue continued to slam his head against the ground. He stared at her feet, weeping and gasping for help. Father, save me. Shi Jingyue stood over him, watching him grovel and scream for mercy. She made no effort to silence him. The noise from upstairs drowned out his cries anyway. Spare me, please. I know I was wrong. If you keep hitting my head, I'll die from these blows. What you're doing is a crime. If I die, you won't survive either. Sobs racked his body. The man finally realized his pleas were futile. He looked up at her with tear-streaked, desperate eyes, hoping to stir a flicker of sympathy. But Shi Jingyue was no ordinary person. She had fought to survive in the apocalypse, hardened by endless bloodshed. Sympathy was nothing but a joke to her. TSK. You were so fond of demanding kowtows. We've only reached 20. Why are you afraid already? Shi Jingyue shouted sharply. She planted a foot firmly on his back, grasped his hair, and drove his head against the ground again. Thud, thud, thud. No. Stop. Spare me. I'll lead you out of here, I swear. He saw the wild determination in her eyes and thrashed violently, wrapping both arms around her calf. His face covered in tears and snot, a pitiful sight. Shi Jingwei pushed his hands away with a look of disgust and continued battering his head against the dirt. In just a short while, blood pooled thickly across the ground. The elder fool's forehead had been split open. Raw, crimson flesh, a jarring sight. His eyes grew unfocused, and he could no longer utter a single sound. Eventually, he slipped into unconsciousness from severe blood loss. Pathetic. I haven't even hit 200 strikes yet. Shi Jingwei tossed him aside like worthless trash. I'll spare your miserable life for now. Thoughts of the original host's fate swirled within her, her gaze dark and seething with malice. She glanced upward toward the cellar entrance. Faint, intermittent shouts still drifted down to her ears. If you've nothing to hide, let us take a look. That's right. We wouldn't want to accuse an innocent person. Are you hiding someone? Trafficking people is a serious crime. Don't drag our village down with your recklessness. We're up for a Village Excellence Award this month. As they spoke, the villagers stared intently at the house, ready to push their way inside. There's no one here, I swear. I'd never dare traffic anyone. I don't even have the connections. Lu Ergu's forehead glistened with cold sweat. He could not chase away the stubborn villagers. A surge of burning rage welled up inside him. For the first time, he grew exasperated with his foolish elder son. Useless oaf. A grown man, yet he could not keep watch over one woman. If he had guarded her properly, none of this would be happening. All he ever did was bring trouble. His younger son was useless too. The elder boy was simple-minded, and even though he stood guard outside, he let her nearly escape. Did he really have to run to the woods to relieve himself? Could he not have stayed right there? Such a fool. A cold smirk tugged wider at Shi Jingyue's lips. Her dangerous eyes settled once more on the unconscious elder fool. If circumstances permitted, she would kill him outright. But killing him was not an option right now. Crippling him, however, was fair game. Shi Jingyue's lips curled upward as she strolled slowly toward the unconscious man. As if sensing her approach, his body trembled repeatedly even in his stupor. Shi Jingyue paid it no mind. She roughly seized his jaw, forcing his mouth open, then wrenched his tongue free. She tossed it onto the ground with disgust. This is what you deserve. The searing pain jolted the elder fool awake again. Bloodshot eyes widened in agony. He stared blankly for a moment, but when he met Shi Jingyue's smiling gaze, he instinctively opened his mouth to beg for mercy. Yet no coherent words emerged, only meaningless noises. He finally understood what had happened. Shock and fury blew his eyes wide. MMPH. Witch. I'll kill you. He snapped completely, lunging toward her in a mad attempt to drag her down with him. But he vastly overestimated his strength. Shi Jingwei kicked him hard, sending him crashing into the stone wall, where he slumped motionless. She pricked up her ears, listening to the noise from above. Judging by the sounds, no one would come down for a while. Only then did she slide down to sit on the dirt floor. Her stomach rumbled loudly. She was starving. This body had gone 3 days without food, weakened to the brink of collapse. Expending even a little strength left her feeling ready to faint. She quickly grabbed a pile of plump sweet potatoes beside her. Ignoring the dry caked dirt covering them, she wiped them roughly and bit into one eagerly. So sweet. The moment the flesh touched her tongue, she closed her eyes in bliss, her eyes lighting up brilliantly. The natural sweetness of fresh food. How long had it been since she tasted something like this? 4 or 5 years, she reckoned. Sweet, juicy sweet potatoes were far better than cockroach flatbread and earthworm rations. If she had known death would bring her such comforts, she would not have struggled to survive in the apocalypse for so long. As she ate, her gaze swept across the small cellar. Mounds of round, plump sweet potatoes stacked like a hill. She longed to stow them all inside her spatial storage. She wondered if her spatial ability had crossed over with her. The thought had barely formed when every sweet potato vanished without a trace. Shi Jingyue's eyes lit up. It came with me. After regaining a little energy, she closed her eyes and focused to sense her powers. Seconds later, she opened her eyes. Her abilities remained intact. This was wonderful news. It looks like I can survive easily in this unfamiliar era. In her past life, she possessed dual abilities, spatial power and healing, both cultivated to the 9th rank. She had been powerful enough to move almost unchallenged through the apocalypse. Her spatial power was far more advanced than ordinary storage abilities. In its early stages, it granted offensive capabilities, short-range teleportation, spatial blades, spatial distortion, and more. At the 9th rank, she could fold space and tear open rifts for brief periods. Her healing ability could save anyone who still drew breath. Yet either the body's extreme frailty could not sustain her full power, or the heavenly laws of this world suppressed her strength. Right now, both her spatial and healing abilities rested roughly at the 2nd rank, with a teleportation limit of only 10 meters. A minor disappointment, but Shi Jingyue's smile quickly returned. It would be more than enough. After all, there were no zombies to fight in this era. Overcome by excitement, she paid the price of carelessness. She then felt stabbing pain from torn scalp and dull throbbing across her face. She cursed under her breath, bastards. She kicked the unconscious elder fool hard. She tried channeling her healing ability. A faint white glow blossomed, warm energy flowing from her feet to the top of her head. The lacerations on her scalp from being grabbed tightly, the slap marks across her face, all vanished instantly. Her body felt lighter than it had in ages, and her weary spirit eased. Shi Jingyue let out a long breath. Power surged through her veins, and reality finally sank in. She waved a hand, and the pile of sweet potatoes reappeared where they had been. It was not yet time to take them away. Shortly after, she realized the noise from above had faded completely. Clattering footsteps echoed toward the cellar door. Her gaze sharpened, and she darted to press herself against the wall beside the doorway. Alongside the footsteps came Lu Ergu's voice, a mix of gratitude and bitter complaining. "Village chief, thank goodness you came. Those meddling fools would have lingered outside forever otherwise. Useless busybodies. If so many local men weren't unwanted by women, I never would have spent the money to get a wife." Pity for his wasted money quickly turned to rage. That Wang Ho hot, sticking her nose into other people's business. She did the most talking and pressed hardest today. Just wait, I'll settle scores with her later. Quiet. The village chief cut him off sharply before he could continue. Do you want to stir up even more trouble? I managed to calm things down this time, but what if it happens again? He struggled to contain his anger, glaring at Lu Ergu with open disapproval. You worthless fool. You cannot even keep one person under watch. What good are you? I warn you, Lu Ergu. Keep her locked down tight. We got away with this incident, but if she escapes again and draws attention, both of us will lose our heads. He stared at Lu Ergu warningly. Do not expect me to cover for you if that happens. I will not hesitate to turn on you. I only helped you out of respect for your father. This is the one and only time. If you land yourself in trouble again, I will not lift a finger to help. Yes, yes. I'm sorry for troubling you, village chief. This was merely an accident. We will be far more careful from now on, and never let that woman slip away again. Lu Ergu bowed and nodded repeatedly in deference. The village chief glanced at him before giving a shallow nod. Keep your foolish son under control too. If he blurts out what's going on, we will both face ruin. Of course, of course. Lu Ergu bowed and scraped as he followed the village chief forward, agreeing to every word. Word has it your new wife can read? She's a high school graduate. They neared the cellar entrance when the village chief suddenly halted, turning to stare straight at Lu Ergu. I believe so. Lu Ergu replied, confused. What are you thinking? A ruthless, knowing glint flashed across the village chief's eyes. A schoolgirl. Clever too. Who knows when she might manipulate your simple-minded son into doing something reckless. What do you mean? Lu Ergu's hand moved to mimic slitting a throat, then he shook his head frantically. No, I can't do that. I spent good money to get this wife. The village chief rolled his eyes. Naturally, you lack education and common sense. His voice turned icy, stripped of all warmth. Break her limbs and cut out her tongue. You only need her to bear children. Her hands and tongue are nothing but a hidden danger. That will come back to haunt you sooner or later. Eliminate the risk. That's brilliant. Why didn't I think of that? Then she'll have no way to run. Lu Ergu's eyes lit up. Hidden behind the door, Shi Jingyue burned with fury. She knew the rough outline of the original story, but she had never learned who proposed crippling the original host. It turned out to be him. This so-called village chief was unworthy of the title. The door creaked open a crack. Lu Ergu glanced back over his shoulder as he spoke. Village chief, she's right in here. My son was guarding her. That girl was already weak, and we starved her for 3 days. She won't be able to put up any resistance now. The cellar was not fully enclosed. a semi-underground space with dim natural light. He stepped inside and failed to notice anything amiss at first. When he spotted his son face down on the ground, he snapped irritably. "Wake up. Why are you sleeping on the dirt? I told you to keep watch, and this is how you do it." He stepped forward. "You idiot boy." After entering, the village chief caught a faint whiff of blood. He frowned and switched on a flashlight. When he saw the pool of blood on the ground, his brows shot upward. "Where's the woman? What did your son do to her? Did he kill her?" Both men took for granted the blood belonged to Lu Urgu's son. They believed the physical gap between men and women, paired with 3 days of starvation, left the woman powerless. Heaven's son, Lu Urgu flipped his son onto his back, stumbling backward in shock. A heavy crash echoed through the quiet cellar. Both men jolted, twisting toward the sound. When they laid eyes on Shi Jingwei, shock washed over their faces. Shi Jingwei advanced toward them with an evil grin. As the two men looked from the bloodied man on the ground to her eerie smile, a strange sense of dread crept over them, and they swallowed nervously. "Stop pretending to be something you're not. You wicked girl. A city student, yet you act without shame. You distracted my son and attacked him while his guard was down, thinking you can threaten us. You think you can stand against us? Puh. I am nothing like my foolish son." Lu Urgu spat in disgust. He refused to believe she possessed any real strength. If she was truly capable, she would never have been trafficked, nor recaptured after running away. She was merely bluffing. He was convinced his son had let his guard down after being tricked. Fueled by fear, he forced himself to suppress. He clenched his fist and charged for her face. "How dare you harm my son? My son may be foolish, but you will not get away with this. I'll beat you senseless, you wretched girl." Lu Urgu worked the land year-round and hunted on the side. Thick muscles bulged along his arms, and his fist cut through the air as it rushed toward Shi Jingwei. The original host would have crumpled from a single blow, but Shi Jingwei was not the original host. Instead of flinching, she smiled. Just as both men thought she had lost her wits, a Tang Dao appeared in her grip. Cold glint of steel flashed into Lu Urgu's sight. His pupils shrank. He realized his mistake too late to pull back. Shi Jingwei struck faster. A heavy impact threw him backward, screaming in agony. His hand hung mangled, blood pouring freely. A severed palm lay on the dirt floor. Dead silence descended over the cellar. The village chief swallowed repeatedly, scrambling backward until his shoulders pressed against the stone wall. He wished he could vanish on the spot. "Aya! My hand! My hand! You cut off my hand?" Lu Urgu clutched his mangled arm, his eyes blazing with venomous hatred, desperate to tear her limb from limb. "So what if I did?" Shi Jingwei shrugged casually and drew closer. While he screamed, she flashed instantly before him. She met his stunned gaze with a malicious grin, then seized his limbs and snapped them one after another. Sharp cracking sounds echoed as bones broke. Lu Urgu screamed once before blacking out from the pain. TCH. How weak. He couldn't endure half as long as his son. Shi Jingwei tossed him aside like a tattered rag doll. The village chief watched the entire sequence unfold in the blink of an eye, overcome with horror. Cold sweat soaked his body, and his legs trembled uncontrollably. Panic surged wildly inside him. He could not stop screaming silently in his mind. They said she was a frail woman? This was not frail. If this counted as weak, then they were useless. Her speed, her brutality, her utter lack of mercy, this woman was a ruthless killer. What kind of monster had Lu Urgu dragged him into dealing with? This would get him killed. He kept his eyes locked on Shi Jingwei. While her attention drifted away from him, he sprinted for the doorway. The distance was less than 50 meters, yet it felt longer than a lifetime. He urged himself to run faster. "Move, legs, move." But, well now, village chief. Where do you think you're going? He was inches from grabbing the door handle when a slender yet powerful hand clamped onto his shoulder. A cold voice whispered beside his ear. Every hair on his body stood straight up. He turned stiffly and met Shi Jingwei's smiling yet frigid eyes. His legs buckled, nearly sending him to his knees. Cold sweat streamed down his forehead, stinging his eyes, but he dared not wipe it away. He forced an ugly smile. Hello, comrade, I'm relieved to see you're unharmed. I know you were trafficked. I came here specifically to rescue you. Where's your hometown? I am the village chief. I can write you an official introduction letter and buy you a train ticket home. Tisk, you have quite the thick skin. I suppose I need to thin it out for you. Shi Jingwei sneered, then struck his face over and over without hesitation. Here to rescue me? Weren't you just planning to have my tongue cut out and my limbs broken? She struck him as she laid bare his lies. The metallic taste of blood filled his mouth. The village chief's fake smile vanished instantly. He spat blood and broken teeth onto the ground, his features twisting in agony. Why you can't? You're breaking the law. He struggled to speak, regret gnawed at him to the core. If he had known this would happen, he would never have made such a suggestion. Was fate set on destroying him today? How had he stumbled across such a calamity? If she possessed such power, why had she let herself be captured? Was this all a trap? Yes, it must be. She planned this all along. Cruel, utterly cruel. It was all Lu Urgu's fault. If he wanted to die, he should have kept others out of it. Don't. Killing people violates the law. He stared at her pleadingly, mouth gaping, trying to invoke the law to appeal to her conscience. I was wrong. I deserve punishment from the Public Security Bureau, but you cannot kill me. I only made a terrible mistake. Spare me, I will never repeat it again. Silence. Shi Jingwei landed another slap. The ferocity in her gaze froze the village chief in place. That look belonged to someone who had killed many times, countless lives. He had met soldiers before, yet none carried the heavy aura of blood and slaughter that clung to her. Who exactly was this woman? He feared she would strike him down without a second thought if angered. Shi Jingwei watched the conflicting emotions warring across his face, and a satisfied smile tugged at her lips. She could not kill him right now. Still, he had given her an important reminder. She was in Quan City, while her original family lived in Shanghai. Nearly 1,000 kilometers separated them. She would need to travel by train, and in this era, tickets were not freely available. Travelers required official introduction letters. What a hassle. Shi Jingwei gripped his jaw, forcing his mouth open. What are you going to do? The village chief stammered, gripped by a terrible premonition. Shi Jingwei ignored him and pulled a small black pill out of her spatial storage. What is that? I won't eat it. Don't force it into my mouth. MMPH. MMPH. The village chief's eyes widened the moment he saw the pill. He could not tell what it was, yet it looked ominous, as if faint black tendrils clung to its surface. Whatever it was, it could not be anything good. He thrashed his head wildly, leaning backward to avoid it. But Shi Jingwei would not let him resist. After several failed attempts to steady his head, she struck his face again, blow after blow. He was stunned, and finally calmed down. Shi Jingwei stuffed something into his mouth. He struggled one last time, refusing to swallow it. But soon, Shi Jingwei dislocated his jaw and forced the substance down his throat. She watched him swallow hard a few times until it went down completely before releasing him in satisfaction. Cough, cough, cough. What was that? What on earth did you make me swallow? The captain coughed until tears streamed down his face, yet he could not bring the substance back up. Poison, of course. Shi Jingwei grinned at him matter-of-factly. Little did she know her smile looked exactly like that of a devil in the captain's eyes. Pale with fright, the captain immediately jammed his fingers down his throat, retching and weeping uncontrollably. He cut a truly miserable figure. Seeing him grow even more frantic as he coughed, Shi Jingwei spoke in a honeyed tone. Stop struggling. You could cough your lungs out and still not get it back up. This poison dissolves the moment it touches saliva. And I've got good news for you, without the antidote within a month, your insides will rot away and you'll die. She smiled sweetly, her voice light and cheerful. You vicious woman. The captain completely lost his composure. You're far more vicious than I am. I'm giving you 1 day to get a travel permit to Shanghai and buy train tickets. Otherwise, you'll die. Shi Jingwei's tone sharpened abruptly, cold and unyielding, an outright command. 1 day? That's impossible. The captain raised his voice sharply. Do you think permits are easy to obtain? Especially cross-provincial travel papers for someone with unknown identity. It would take at least a week. Though he said this, a flicker of relief stirred inside him. At the very least, Shi Jingwei was not going to kill him right away. That meant he still stood a chance. 3 days. The corners of Shi Jingwei's lips lifted. She pressed her blood-stained tang blade against his neck without hesitation. I'll only give you 3 days. If I don't see those documents by then, this blade will taste fresh blood. She enunciated the last 3 words slowly, thick with icy killing intent. As if on cue, drops of blood left on the blade from Lu Urgu dripped steadily onto his feet. The frigid menace and heavy metallic stench of blood made his stomach churn. Understood. I understand. Bitter as it was, he had no choice but to nod frantically. Shi Jingwei studied his expression and noticed a damp patch spreading down his trousers, accompanied by a sharp smell of urine. She stepped back 2 paces in disgust. She narrowed her eyes dangerously and stared at him once more. Don't even think about seeking a doctor, running away, or calling for help. This poison is odorless and colorless. No doctor in the world can detect it. You can try any of those things if you're eager to die. I might not perish, but you certainly will be the first to go. The captain shuddered at the mental image. The schemes that had just sprouted in his mind vanished instantly. He felt as though he had crossed paths with a demon. Could this woman read his very thoughts? How did she know what he was planning? I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare at all. You'd better keep that attitude. Shi Jingwei lowered the blade and shoved him hard. Get out of my sight. Oh, and I want 300 yuan as well. The captain's legs were already weak, and the shove sent him sprawling flat on the ground. At the mention of 300 yuan, his eyes widened in shock. 300 yuan. That was an enormous sum. She spoke of it as casually as if it were 3 coins. He simply did not have that kind of money. Still, he dared not utter a single word of protest. He scrambled hastily to his feet and fled. His life mattered above everything else. The murderous gaze fixed on his back felt inescapable, spurring him to run faster, terrified she would catch up and kill him at any moment. Only after watching him vanish completely did Shi Jingwei wave her hand and store all the sweet potatoes left in the cellar into her space. She dragged the unconscious Lu Ergu and the other man like sacks and strode boldly out of the cellar. The cellar connected directly to the Lu family's kitchen. She walked through the narrow passage and pushed open the small exit door. Hanging from the beams right in front of her were smoked hares and wild pheasants. Rich meat fragrance drifted into her nose. After going so long without proper meat, Shi Jingwei's mouth watered uncontrollably. One reason Lu Ergu could afford to bring a wife for his son was that he was a licensed hunter with exceptional hunting skills. Most game he caught was traded to the supply and marketing cooperative for cash. A small portion was kept for his family to eat, and a tiny amount was secretly exchanged for scarce supplies such as salt. The Lu household never lacked meat. She glanced around. A large clay stove stood against the yellow mud wall. She lifted the pot lid, only to find it empty. Disappointment washed over her. Beside the stove stood 2 huge earthen jars. She removed their wooden lids and found them brimming with cornmeal and sorghum flour. The aroma of grain filled her nostrils, lighting up her eyes. Food, piles and piles of food. She'd struck gold. She felt like a rat that had stumbled into a rice vat. She quickly uncovered smaller jars, revealing small stalks of wheat flour, rice, dried mushrooms, wood ear fungus, wild walnuts, and preserved wild fruits. There were even peach shortbread, fruit candies, and white rabbit creamy candy. She popped a piece of shortbread into her mouth and closed her eyes happily. So delicious. Her excitement was understandable. Food was extremely scarce in the later days of the apocalypse, and she had not tasted snacks like these for ages. No wonder that fool is doted on. The Lu family is far wealthier than I expected. From everything the original host had witnessed over the past 3 days, white rabbit creamy candy was an extravagant luxury for village children. Yet every time Lu Ergu went to town, he brought some back for his son. The elder mute brother, whose tongue she had cut out, was the family cook. Though he was a man, his cooking skills were outstanding. She cursed inwardly. She should not have broken his hands. Thankfully, they were only fractured, not severed. With that thought, Shi Jingwei tossed Lu Ergu and the mute onto the ground. She grabbed the mute's hands, channeled a small amount of her healing ability, and snapped the broken bones back into place. MMPH. Agony jolted the mute awake. When he laid eyes on Shi Jingwei, memories of what had happened flooded back. He scrambled backward in terror and cowed out frantically, opening and closing his mouth as if trying to speak. Shut up. So noisy. Your tongue's gone, yet you still keep making a racket. Annoyed, Shi Jingwei grabbed him by the collar. Start cooking for me now. She tossed the hares, pheasants, and all the chicken and duck eggs she found in the cabinet before him, then pointed at the sack of white rice. Use all of these. The mute instinctively covered his head, expecting another beating. He froze in shock when he realized she only wanted him to cook. He stared blankly at 4 hares, 3 pheasants, and more than a dozen eggs laid out before him. God in heaven. He was crippled, his legs broken, and his tongue cut out. Now she expected a disabled man like him to prepare such an enormous feast? He would rather be killed outright. Abba. All of this? Though despairing, he gestured awkwardly at the pile of game, making unintelligible sounds. He suspected Shi Jingwei had turned into a ghost. How could one person eat so much food? Yes. You have 1 hour. If you fail, I'll beat you half to death. Shi Jingwei shook her fist threateningly. Don't you dare spit in the food. If I catch you, haha, she smiled meaningfully. The mute shuddered at that chilling chuckle and the 1-hour deadline that sounded like a death sentence. He shook his head vigorously, then dragged a stool over to the stove on his knees and scrambled to light the fire. He looked utterly pitiful. But Shi Jingwei felt not an ounce of sympathy for him. Satisfied that Lu Ergu and the mute posed no threat, she walked toward the smallest room. Loud snores echoed from within. The simple-minded young man she had knocked unconscious slept soundly, even blowing snot bubbles. Tisk, he's quite handsome, for an idiot. Shi Jingwei lifted his chin with one hand, wondering how she ought to deal with him. According to the novel's plot, he was nothing more than a simple fool who made messes everywhere. But every misfortune the original host endured traced back to him. Wife, why did you hit me? My head hurts. Blow on it to make it better. Shi Jingwei was still lost in thought when the fool suddenly opened his eyes. His face lit up the instant he saw her. It was hard to believe such a gruff voice could produce such childish, simpering tones. Shi Jingyue's face twisted with irritation, feeling her ears assaulted. Oblivious to her disgust, the fool leaned his head toward her, pursing his foul-smelling lips. Kiss me. Father said I need to kiss you so you can give me children. Shi Jingwei squeezed her eyes shut and opened them again, repulsed. Rage welled up in her gaze. Your father is the bastard. Who is your wife? Children? Go to hell. From now on, call me mistress. She kicked him hard onto the floor. Ignoring his cries of pain, she lifted her leg and struck him sharply in the lower body. A crisp crack echoed out. The fool collapsed, permanently robbed of the ability to have children. I'll spare your life only because you're simple-minded, she said dismissively, then slouched onto a stool, closed her eyes, and waited for the meal to finish cooking. The fool rolled on the ground in agony. Once the worst of the pain faded, he stared at her with tear-filled, hurt eyes. He tried to reach out to touch her, but pulled his hand back as if burned when he met her icy stare. He mumbled the word wife under his breath, falling silent immediately when she shot him a dark look. Shi Jingwei paid him no mind. She sorted through every memory she held of this novel and this world. Unfortunately, she had only read the first 2 chapters and the final 2. Enraged that the villainous female lead got a happy ending despite all her crimes, she had tossed the book away. Even after regaining her memories, the original host only knew the fate of her own family and a rough outline of the female lead story, with little grasp of specific details. But no matter. When trouble comes, I'll face it head-on. With that thought, she turned her consciousness inward to her spatial storage. She had awakened her space ability in the 5th year of the apocalypse, so she did not have many supplies of food or medicine stored within. What little she kept consisted mostly of unappetizing emergency rations, insect patties, dried bugs, plant cakes, and cured meat from mutated beasts. Though she had been a well-known figure in the survivor base, rations such as expired compressed biscuits, small stocks of rice, and occasional ordinary meat were always eaten as soon as they were distributed, never stored away. Only the unpleasant emergency insect-based rations remained as a last resort. Apart from food, however, her space held countless supplies: off-road vehicles, regular cars, motorcycles, inflatable boats, warm clothing, cold weapons, and firearms of all kinds. Before the apocalypse, she had been an overworked laborer who never got the chance to drive nice cars. She had stored all these vehicles in her space simply to admire them. She never imagined she would transmigrate one day, and all these treasures might finally serve a purpose. Her lips curved as she mentally ran her fingers over the brand-new Porsche and Maybach she had collected from a car dealership long ago. Abba. The mute's garbled sounds pulled her awareness back to reality. She opened her eyes and saw him drenched in sweat, his knees bruised and scraped from rushing around. He looked thoroughly beaten. He and the fool huddled together, both weeping. The mute stared at Shi Jingwei with overwhelming regret, fear, and anxiety. He longed to wake her, yet feared she would strike him if he disturbed her rest. If he let the hours slip by without finishing the meal, she might chop off his hands in a rage. His father was proof of how merciless she was. He regretted everything so deeply his insides ached, sweating buckets with anxiety. He could only stand by, babbling silently, begging her to wake up soon. No one could understand the hell he had endured. As a disabled man, rushing to cook on his knees was pure torment. If he could turn back time, he would rather take the fool's place as the purchased bride than cross paths with Shi Jingwei. She was a devil incarnate. He nearly wept with relief when she finally opened her eyes. Abba, Abba, Abba. He gestured toward the kitchen, then pointed at the clock on the wall. He was signaling that the hour had not yet passed. TSK. You're punctual. I was half hoping you'd run over the time, so I could chop you up and add you to the pot. Shi Jingwei smiled pleasantly, speaking of dismembering a human being as casually as chopping vegetables. The mute stiffened instantly, trembling violently, his heart hammering in his chest. Chop him up and cook him? Images flashed through his mind, himself laid on the cutting board, sliced apart just like the game he had prepared. He nearly fainted from terror and patted his chest wildly in relief. Thank goodness he finished on time. She truly was an evil spirit. Shi Jingwei laughed, her mood lifting as the rich scent of cooking meat drifted toward her. She strode eagerly toward the kitchen. The mute stared at her retreating back for a long time, then burst into bitter tears once more. Brother, she doesn't want me anymore. The fool tugged at his sleeve, eyes red. She kicked me just now. I feel different now. He pointed toward his lower body and stared innocently at his elder brother. His words snapped the mute out of his despair. A surge of rage twisted his features. He shoved the fool roughly to the ground. It was all this fool's fault. If not for him, they would never have bought a bride. Why must he suffer broken legs and a severed tongue, while the fool only endured one injury? It was unfair. Anger boiling over, he threw punch after punch at the fool's simple face. Brother, why are you hitting me? I'll tell father. The fool covered his head and dodged about, sobbing. The mute chased after him, crawling on his knees. Shi Jingwei leaned against the doorway, holding a bucket of rice. She ate heartily, mouthfuls of meat and eggs, watching the spectacle unfold. It was thoroughly entertaining. Far more interesting than fighting zombies in the apocalypse. She had definitely landed in the right place. She watched the fight with great amusement. The mute grew exhausted, his body throbbing with pain, ready to collapse on the ground and rest. But when he glanced over and spotted Shi Jingwei, he froze as though he had seen a ghost. He hesitated to stop chasing the fool. What if she was enjoying the show and grew angry if the entertainment ended? What if she kicked his skull in? Or followed through on her threat to kill and eat him? A shudder ran through him as he pictured her wolfing down meat. It felt as if he could imagine her feasting on his flesh. Every part of his body ached with phantom terror. There was no doubting it. This vicious woman was fully capable of doing exactly that. Desperate to survive, he forced himself to keep chasing the fool for a long while. Blood seeped from the raw wounds on his scraped knees and stained the earth beneath him. Shi Jingwei had no idea how wildly his imagination ran. She simply thought the man possessed remarkable perseverance. To keep chasing someone under such terrible injuries, what deep hatred he must hold. Hand over all your family's money and valuables. The mute could barely drag himself forward, silently praying she would finish eating and leave quickly. He longed more than anything to send this calamity out of his home. Just as dizziness threatened to overwhelm him and his lips turned pale, Shi Jingwei finally spoke. The mute looked as though he had received a pardon. He wept and smiled at once, and without hesitation fetched a small redwood box. He held the box out to her with both hands, gesturing between the money, the fool, and Shi Jingwei. He meant most of the family's savings had been spent buying her. Shi Jingwei opened the box and saw a jumble of bills and coins, only 23 yuan and 58 fen in total. Tisk, penniless lot. She tucked the box into her clothes with disdain. The mute paid no mind to the insult. He bowed repeatedly, begging her to leave as soon as possible. They truly had no more money. Shi Jingwei said nothing. She stood and walked toward the courtyard gate. The mute fainted away in joyous tears. Thank heavens. The terrifying fiend was leaving at last. He had no idea how true the saying went. Summoning a spirit is easy, sending one away is impossible. Shi Jingwei had no intention of leaving for good. She locked the gate to trap the family inside and stop them from escaping. Guided by the moonlight and her memories of wandering the village as the original host, she strode boldly toward the far end of the village. A run-down thatched hut stood alone at the village's edge. Cough, cough, cough. A middle-aged man who appeared barely 40 lay curled on a wooden bed, racked by violent coughs that felt as though they would tear his lungs apart. Upon closer inspection, his condition was strange. His face burned red and sweat soaked his skin, yet his lips trembled uncontrollably from cold. He looked utterly weak and exhausted. So hot, so cold, he alternated between clutching his tattered quilt tightly around himself and throwing it off, tormented by waves of fever. His face was etched with agony, his eyelids trembling violently as he tossed and turned, trapped in a torturous cycle of searing heat and icy chill. "Dad, quickly, have some water." The young man had just fetched boiled warm water when he saw the scene unfolding. He hurried forward in 3 long strides, supporting the older man's shoulders with worry and care, slowly lifting the cup to feed him water. Feeling the scorching heat radiating from his father's forehead and body, his anxiety grew even stronger. As the middle-aged man weakly pried open his eyes, he couldn't help complaining. What terrible medicine that village doctor prescribed. It's been 2 days, and there's not the slightest improvement. If anything, his father's condition had grown worse. Watching his father sip the water laboriously, he gently patted his back and spoke anxiously. "Dad, this illness hit you hard. We can't put it off any longer. The village barefoot doctor can't treat you. Tomorrow I'll take you into town to see a proper doctor." "No, it's unnecessary. It's just a bad cold. I'll recover with rest. Don't waste the money, we barely have any savings left." After drinking the water, the middle-aged man felt the crushing exhaustion ease slightly. He forced a faint smile and gripped his son's hand. The young man swept his gaze around the shabby room and let out a heavy sigh. He sank onto the bed, covered his eyes, and wept helplessly in agony. "It's all my fault, Dad. I trusted the wrong people and dragged you into this mess. If not for me, Mom wouldn't have. You wouldn't be stuck like this, without even enough money for medical treatment. Everything is my fault." "Yow!" The middle-aged man slowly lifted a hand to wipe away his son's tears. His gaze met the young man's, firm and resolute. "This is not your fault. Those people plotted against us deliberately. Even if you'd made no mistakes, we would still have suffered this disaster. The most important thing is that you pull yourself together. One day, we will get back what belongs to us. All right." The young man lifted his red-rimmed eyes, staring fixedly at his father. After a long moment, he pressed his lips together and nodded solemnly. Soon his tone shifted again. "No, Dad, we can't delay your treatment any longer. I could sell the keepsake Mom left behind to get money for your care. Luckily, I kept it hidden secretly." He sighed once more, resolve hardening in his eyes. "Mom is already gone. If something terrible happens to you, what will I do?" Sorrow thickened in his voice. "We still have to avenge Mom." Silence descended over the room as father and son stared at one another. "I've made up my mind. Tomorrow I'll take you to town." And the young man paused for several seconds, leaning close to the middle-aged man's ear and lowering his voice, every word sharp with rage and hatred. "I saw everything today. That scoundrel Lou Urgu and his family are utterly heartless. They're trafficking women. That young woman looks younger than me, still so inexperienced. She might even be a student. I plan to head into town to file a police report tomorrow. Now that I know what's happening, I cannot let that young girl lose her future here." "What? They dare traffic women? Have they lost their minds?" The middle-aged man flew into a rage and slammed his palm against the table. The sudden outburst triggered a violent fit of coughing. The young man rushed to pat his back, but his father brushed his hand away, staring at him in disappointment. "You saw her today. Why didn't you rescue her?" "Dad, calm down, please. I was just about to take her away, but Lou Urgu and his whole family were there. I didn't dare act recklessly." The young man hurried to soothe his father. "That's why I plan to report them to the police tomorrow. That way we won't bring trouble down on ourselves. We've only recently moved to this village and know no one here, while their family has deep roots in this place. If I rush to act, not only might I fail to save the young woman, the two of us could get badly beaten. We would face endless retaliation afterward. Every member of their family is strong and imposing. Word says they act tyrannically, and we cannot afford to provoke them." "Very well. Tomorrow I'm going into town with you." "Those beasts must be arrested by the authorities." The middle-aged man nodded in agreement. Despite the agony racking his body, righteous anger burned brightly in his eyes. "There's no need to go." Sure Jingwei had heard every word inside the room. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. "Who's there?" The sudden voice startled both the father and son. They twisted their heads at once, freezing the moment they laid eyes on her. Recovering quickly, The middle-aged man studied her warily, trying to judge whether she was friend or foe. How long had she been listening? Considering their true identities, would she report them? Damn it. How could they have been so careless? They had forgotten to lock the door. He shot a frustrated, reproachful glance at his impulsive son. The young man, however, did not entertain such complicated thoughts. He recognized Shi Jingwei instantly and grew excited. You are the woman Lu Erga kidnapped. You escaped. That's wonderful. Joy washed over him, followed by a stamp of frustration. Oh no. You've gone the wrong way. This is the far end of the village. The road out of town lies ahead. He craned his neck to peer outside the doorway, relieved to see no sign of Lu Ergu. He hurried back inside and firmly shut the door. An idea struck him straight after, and he reached out to take Shi Jingyue's hand. Come, I'll lead you out of the village. You can't stay in our house. We won't be able to protect you. He hesitated immediately. But it's far too late at night. Maybe I can take you to see the village captain. He's a good man. He will definitely help you. Watching the young man pace back and forth, tangled with worry on her behalf, Shi Jingwei smiled sincerely for the first time since arriving in this era. In the apocalypse, trust was a luxury. She never easily placed faith in others. Everyone she had met since arriving here had been cruel, so she rarely extended kindness to strangers. Yet now she was moved by this man's pure, honest goodness. The original host had mentioned this father and son. In the original timeline, Li Guangyao did travel to town to call the police the next day. What he did not know was that one officer at the station was closely acquainted with Lu Ergu. Lu Erga often gifted him game hunted from the mountains. Upon hearing the accusation, the officer refused to file an official report. Instead, he tipped off Lu Ergu and his family. Before father and son could return home after the doctor's visit, the three men ambushed them. Strong and brutish, they broke Li Guangyao's leg and beat his father until he could barely rise from bed. When they discovered the golden lock Li Guangyao owned, they robbed it without mercy. Li Guangyao knelt and begged them repeatedly, pleading for mercy, begging them not to take the heirloom. It was meant to buy medicine for his father. But Lu Ergu and his kin kicked him away coldly. Though his leg was shattered and confined him to bed for a long time, Li Guangyao survived, being young and strong. His father was not so fortunate. The beating left him barely clinging to life. Already suffering from malaria, he passed away soon afterward. They were outsiders with no allies in the village, so no one noticed the tragedy. Once Lu Ergu's family learned the older man had died, fear gripped them. Terrified of retaliation and further police reports, they resolved to silence Li Guangyao too under cover of night. The pair had never known the original host, yet they lost their lives because of her in the original story. They were good people. She had to save them. The wicked deserved to suffer, not the innocent. With that thought, Shi Jingwei pulled her hand free from Li Guangyao's grasp. Don't bother. Li Guangyao stared in confusion, unable to understand her intentions. Shi Jingwei walked over and seated herself on a rickety wooden stool with one broken leg. Her gaze swept across the small cottage. Poverty hung thick in the air, so destitute that even thieves would leave empty-handed, perhaps even dropping a coin out of sympathy. Her eyes shifted to the middle-aged man on the bed. Though his face was pale, he possessed sharp, handsome features. There was an uncommon bearing about him. She met his sharp, hawk-like stare as he sized her up, and a faint smile tugged at her lips. Clearly, he was no ordinary man. How had he ended up in such straits? But that was none of her concern. She pulled more than 20 yuan, stolen from Lu Ergu's home, and set the money before Li Guangyao. Li Guangyao gaped, equal parts stunned and uneasy, as if holding burning coal. Comrade, symmetry and doubt filled his gaze. He wondered if she had lost her senses. Why hand over money to a stranger in the dead of night? What a pitiful girl. Those beasts Lu Erga have committed unspeakable evil. Such a beautiful young woman, wronged like this. Shi Jingwei heard his muttered thoughts and twitched her lips. She realized he had completely misunderstood the situation. She chose not to explain, instead walking to the edge of the older man's bed. Now that she was here, she would not let the two men die. She reached for the middle-aged man's wrist. He tensed and instinctively tried to pull his arm away. But fever racked his body, clouding his mind. He could not muster the strength to move an inch. He could only watch helplessly as the strange young woman pressed her fingers to his wrist, pretending to feel his pulse. While her gesture mimicked pulse diagnosis, Shi Jingwei quietly released her perception, drifting upward along his arm to examine his body. In her mind, she could see tiny worm-like parasites drifting within his dark red blood, clusters gathering inside his liver. Alongside faint, weak signs of fading vitality. Before the apocalypse, she had been a medical university student. She knew quite a lot about illnesses common in the 1970s. The symptoms were distinctive, and she reached a preliminary judgment instantly, her brows drawing together. Are you a doctor? Li Guangyao had intended to step forward and stop her, fearing she would harm his father. But watching her serious expression as she felt the pulse, radiating an air of quiet authority that inspired trust, he froze in place. He knew the village doctor could not cure his father. Logically, such a young woman was unlikely to help. Yet looking at her delicate, elegant features, he found himself believing her despite everything. Yes, I am a doctor. Under his hopeful gaze, Shi Jingwei slowly withdrew her hand and spoke solemnly. Your father does not have an ordinary cold. He has malaria. Going into town for treatment will likely be useless. You might even face mandatory quarantine. Though anti-malarial medicine and artemisinin existed at this time, supplies were limited and not widely distributed nationwide. Malaria still claimed many lives, especially in rural villages. What? Truly malaria? The middle-aged man had suspected as much long after ordinary medicines failed. Yet he had kept it hidden from his son. Now that his fears were confirmed, clarity washed over his foggy mind. He tried to push Shi Jingwei away and snapped at his son sharply. This disease is contagious. Keep everyone far from me. No, it can't be. I refuse to believe it. How could Dad catch malaria? Li Guangyao was on the verge of despair, shaking his head silently. How could misfortune strike like this? We'd barely settled down. If the villagers find out, they'll drive us out of the village. What are we going to do? The faint smile faded from his face. It felt as though the sky was collapsing, misfortune piled upon misfortune. It's nothing serious. I have a cure. What can you possibly do? Malaria is stubborn and terribly difficult to treat. Please don't make things harder for us. You are already in enough danger yourself. You should leave quickly, before you catch the illness or get captured by Lu Ergu's family. Li Guangyao's eyes reddened. He clenched his fists and moved to push Shi Jingwei toward the door. To his embarrassment, though he stood nearly 6 feet tall, he could not shift the smaller woman, barely 160 centimeters tall. Impossible. Had he grown this week? No, that could not be true. A man could not admit he lacked strength. Shi Jingwei paid no attention to his bewildered expression. Without further conversation, she pulled acupuncture needles from her sleeve, secretly retrieved from her spatial storage, and focused intently, inserting them into the older man's acupoints. She could have skipped this outward display, yet she needed the act to avoid arousing suspicion. Hidden from sight, healing energy flowed along each needle. Like a cleansing tide, it dissolved every active plasmodium and toxin circulating in his bloodstream. Gentle restorative energy traveled through his blood vessels to every corner of his body, guided by her will. The middle-aged man felt enveloped in warm, soothing currents. The alternating waves of burning heat and cold that had plagued him faded rapidly. Shock and wonder lit his face, and he let out a quiet sigh of relief. He knew well how malaria worked. Standard treatment required medication. He never imagined acupuncture alone could bring such immediate comfort and improvement. She must be a divine healer. Truly, the ancient methods passed down by our ancestors were extraordinary. Standing nearby, Li Guangyao witnessed his father's transformation firsthand. His eyes widened in disbelief. The flushed skin brought on by fever regained a healthy tone. His tense body relaxed, and his coughing subsided unnoticed. Li Guangyao stepped closer to Shi Jingwei, staring unblinkingly at her movements. Respect and admiration welled up inside him. It was miraculous. A disease people feared deeply subdued in mere minutes by her hands. She was an extraordinary healer. It would be a tragedy if she fell victim to this remote mountain village. Lu Ergu deserved severe punishment. As Shi Jingwei quickened her pace, beads of sweat rolled down her forehead. He glanced around hastily, grabbed a cloth handkerchief, and shyly dabbed the sweat from her brow. Gratitude deepened within him. His gaze drifted briefly to her slender neck before he quickly looked away, flustered. Shi Jingwei remained fully concentrated on treatment, unable to afford distraction. In her former life, curing a single malaria patient would have been trivial, effortless as crushing an ant. But this body was frail. Already, exhaustion washed over her, leaving her drained. She had hoped to go above and beyond, using her powers to eliminate all dormant plasmodia in his liver, heal underlying chronic damage, and restore his body to peak condition. It was impossible now. Shi Jingwei channeled her consciousness inward, directing healing energy toward his liver, seeping into the gaps between liver cells. She carefully wrapped and stripped dormant parasites trapped inside the cells, purifying and destroying them repeatedly. Ugh, a soft groan escaped the middle-aged man. Bear with it. I'm clearing dormant parasites. Your symptoms have eased, yet we have only removed the surface infection. Unless these dormant organisms are destroyed, the illness will return, and you will never fully recover. Shi Jingwei glanced up at him, suppressing the urge to cough up blood, her voice low and calm. Her tone carried quiet authority, compelling father and son to nod automatically. Their minds reeled. They had never heard of such a method of treatment. It seemed almost magical. It's done. Eat more eggs later to replenish protein. Approximately 2 minutes later, Shi Jingwei exhaled heavily, withdrawing the needles and recalling her healing power. She subtly took a crystal core from her storage space and absorbed energy from it, regaining a small measure of strength. Still, her heart ached. She only possessed 10 crystal cores left in her space, each one irreplaceable. Thank you, comrade, thank you. You are truly a miraculous healer. As soon as she finished speaking, the young man rushed forward anxiously to check on his father. To his amazement, his father pushed him aside and climbed out of bed, looking revitalized. He even performed a set of Tai Chi movements. Though he had sensed improvement earlier, Li Guangyao remained stunned. His father appeared lighter, more energetic than he had been in years. Thank you for saving my life, divine healer. The middle-aged man bowed deeply and sincerely toward Shi Jingwei. May I know your name? I will repay this kindness when the opportunity arises. No need. Shi Jingwei shook her head, meeting his earnest, resolute gaze. There is no need for thanks. I am simply repaying a debt. If not for the fact that these two men would lose their lives for the original host in a future that had yet to unfold, she would not have intervened. Ultimately, it was their inherent goodness. They were not destined to die. What? Even the worldly middle-aged man fell into momentary confusion. He could not fathom what she meant by repaying a debt. They had done nothing for her. Comrade, does he need to take any more medicine? I've heard malaria is terrifying and can leave lasting complications. Should he avoid hard labor and rest fully? Li Guangyao suddenly remembered and asked anxiously. No, Shi Jingwei shook her head confidently. Her powers operated far differently from conventional treatment. She had rooted out the illness entirely. Incredible. Li Guangyao's eyes lit up, staring at her with unbridled admiration. Truly, hidden masters exist among ordinary folk. The ancient wisdom of our ancestors is unmatched. Master, would you take an apprentice? Can I learn acupuncture from you? His longing was plain to see. He momentarily forgot all their troubles, eager to abandon his studies and master this peerless medical skill. Shi Jingyue's lips twitched. I take no apprentices. There was no point. Without her supernatural abilities, the rapid, side-effect-free recovery she had achieved would be impossible. I take my leave. Perhaps we shall meet again someday. She offered them a casual wave, without lingering another second, and strode toward the doorway. Wait, comrade. We cannot accept this 20 yuan. You saved my father's life. We ought to pay you, not take money from you. Li Guangyao felt a flicker of disappointment upon learning he could not study medicine. But he quickly slapped his forehead and hurried forward. Bang! Yet the small wooden door slammed shut violently. Shi Jingyue's unrestrained voice drifted out. Consider them a loan from me. You can repay me tenfold someday. Look at how destitute you are. That quilt reeks. I nearly choked on the stench just now. Li Guangyao barely dodged the door as it nearly clamped onto his face, stumbling backward 2 steps. Her words filled him with awkwardness and embarrassment all at once. Dad, why does this divine healer have such a sharp tongue? He turned to his father with a dejected look. His father stared fixedly at the wooden door, lost in thought for several seconds before he spoke. Son, we were destined to survive. We must pull ourselves together and return to seek revenge. Only then can we repay our savior for sparing our lives. Right? Li Guangyao set aside his embarrassment, clenching his fists tightly, resolve burning in his eyes. He could not stop replaying the sight of Shi Jingyue's bold back as she left. Both of them understood her kindness. Dad, where do you think our savior went? Could she be in danger? Recalling what they had witnessed earlier, worry crept over Li Guangyao's face. Likely not. She is no ordinary person. The middle-aged man shook his head, remembering Shi Jingyue's confident, dazzling bearing. Still, confusion lingered. How could someone like her have been sold into servitude? Strange indeed. Curiosity aside, he told his son to go and gather information about Lu Ergu's family first thing the next morning. Meanwhile, the brigade leader rushed straight toward the production team headquarters the moment he stepped outside. He dared not waste a single second. The cross-provincial letter of introduction required layers of approval. Any delay would spell disaster for him. When he arrived, he saw the gates tightly closed. It suddenly dawned on him that night had fallen, and no one remained at the headquarters. Touching his swollen, puffy face, he decided not to head home. His wife would pester him with questions, and the round trip would eat up precious time. He resolved to sleep right outside the gate. Far removed from his anxious vigil, Lu Ergu broke down completely after waking and discovering one of his hands had been crippled. Curse that woman. How could she be so ruthless? She maimed me without hesitation. What am I supposed to do now? I can no longer hunt with one hand. As he spoke, he shifted his limbs slightly and found he could not feel anything in his arms and legs. Realizing all his limbs had been broken, he erupted into furious curses. Damn her. Hunting was out of the question. He was a broken man now. He could not move an inch, forced to drag his battered body across the ground like an animal. Father. Wu, you're awake. Eldest brother hurt me. Look at my face, my body is covered in scratches. You have to punish him for me. The simple-minded younger son squatted nearby, drooling. When he saw Lu Ergu awake, he grew excited and pointed wildly at his elder brother. The elder son, also mentally impaired, woke up again. Ignoring his brother, he scanned the surroundings frantically. Finding no trace of Shi Jingyue, he dragged his broken body over, wrapped his arms around Lu Ergu's neck, and wailed. Tears of relief streamed down his face. Abie, son, what happened to you? Heavens! Your tongue has been cut out. That vicious woman. She wants to destroy our entire family. We are crippled. One son is simple-minded, the other cannot speak. What will become of us? Lu Ergu collapsed into hysterical sobs when he saw his eldest son's ruined state. The tough man could no longer hold back his grief. He still had no idea both his sons had suffered irreversible harm. Or his despair would have deepened even further. Father, make him stop hurting me. The younger son prodded Lu Ergu repeatedly. Lu Ergu stared at his drooling son, overcome with despair. He slapped the ground weakly. Why must this simple-minded boy remain unharmed? Why not him? Hurry, fetch Dr. Su to treat us. Perhaps our bones can still be set. Go quickly. That's right, report her. We must have that cruel woman arrested. Move, you useless boy. Lu Ergu gave his son a feeble shove, his former warmth replaced by revulsion. In stark contrast, the elder son waved his hands wildly, seemingly glad the terrifying Shi Jingyue was gone. Okay, though hurt, the younger son obeyed his father and stumbled toward the door. He struggled for ages, but could not get it open. Lu Ergu and the elder son glared at him, seething. You fool, turn the handle left. Can't you even open a door? You're good for nothing. Why couldn't you be the one left broken and mute? The thought that they would have to rely on this boy for everything filled them with bleak hopelessness. They wished they could end it all. Father, I can't open it. The younger boy's eyes welled with tears. Useless, useless, useless. Lu Ergu shouted frantically. The elder son still had limited use of his hands, so he dragged his damaged body over to open the door. He had thought the younger boy was simply too slow-witted. But when he grabbed the handle, he realized the door had been locked from the outside. The joy he'd felt at Shi Jingyue's departure vanished instantly. A crushing dread washed over him. All his irritation and disdain for his brother gave way to terror. He swallowed hard, a terrible premonition taking hold. Could she still be nearby? Did she intend to trap them here to die? Just as the thought crossed his mind, light footsteps echoed outside. The younger boy's eyes widened in terror. He scrambled backward on his broken limbs, trembling, and hid behind Lu Ergu, peering out cautiously. He prayed desperately that Shi Jingyue would not return. He was truly terrified of her. But his worst fear came true. The door swung open, revealing Shi Jingyue's beautiful face, curved into a smile. The elder son felt his heart seize, nearly fainting on the spot. The younger boy's eyes lit up for a split second, about to call out, but the memory of his fear silenced him. Lu Erga had hoped it was the brigade leader coming to rescue them. When he lifted his eyes and saw Shi Jingwei, his heart sank. He recalled everything that had happened before he lost consciousness. Seeing no sign of the brigade leader, he silently mourned the man. It seemed he had met a terrible fate. Farewell, old friend. Well now, look who's all gathered here. Perfect timing. I need hot water to bathe and soak my feet. You, go boil water. You, find clean clothes for me. And you, come massage me right now. Without hesitation, Shi Jingwei pointed in turn at the elder son, Lu Ergu, and the younger boy, ordering them to wait on her. She showed no remorse for giving tasks to disabled men. She planned to stay here for 3 days. And she would make full use of them while she could. The elder son immediately scrambled to obey. Lu Erga stared at his broken limbs, stunned and indignant. Why me? I'm in this state, and you still demand I work? Worse still, his wife had always waited on him. Now he was expected to serve a young woman. If word got out, he would lose all dignity. Oh. Shi Jingwei raised an eyebrow. Before she could act, the elder son dragged himself forward, clamped a hand over Lu Ergu's mouth, forced a nervous smile toward Shi Jingwei, and pushed his father away. Though his legs could not support him, he found he could move about using only his arms. His heart ached bitterly at the thought of endless servitude stretching ahead. He longed to die. Yet, surviving, no matter how difficult, was better than death. What are you doing? Why have you turned so cowardly? You act like a tame dog, obeying every word she says. Can't you fight back? I only lost because I underestimated her. Your hands still work. You and your brother could overpower her together. Once they reached the kitchen, Lu Ergo pulled the elder son's hand away and muttered angrily. The elder son's mouth twitched. He suspected his father still had not grasped how powerless they truly were. Fight her? He dared not. If his father wanted to throw his life away, he could do it alone. He sighed at Lu Ergu's blind recklessness. It seemed he alone knew the full horror of what they had endured. The agony of having his head slammed against the ground, the brutal blows he had suffered. He never wanted to experience that torment again. It was all his father's fault. None of this would have happened if he had not tried to buy a wife for the younger brother. 1,000 thoughts raged in his mind, yet he could not speak a single word. He could not even write. Unable to read or hold a writing brush, he gave Lu Ergu a gesture to stay quiet and help himself. Then he dragged his body to fetch water and light the stove. He intended to ignore his father's complaints. Lu Ergu watched him go, his lips moving without sound. He had no choice but to comply. The thought of tending to Shi Jingwei like servants for days on end filled him with resentment. But there was no escape. Their suffering was the fruit of their own misdeeds. Hee, mistress, let me rub your legs. Is this pressure all right? Shall I go lighter? As Lu Erga resigned himself to his task, he heard his younger son's foolish, ingratiating voice from the next room. Rage twisted his features. Why had he fathered such a useless boy? The younger son called Shi Jingwei mistress so readily. The fool had stumbled into the easiest fate of all. It was simply unfair. He ground his teeth and set off to search for clothing. Shi Jingwei paid no mind to their inner turmoil. She closed her eyes and let the younger boy knead her shoulders, arms, and legs. Moments later, the elder son hobbled over with a basin of steaming water. He knelt before her like a servant, removing her shoes and washing her feet. This feels wonderful. Shi Jingwei smiled, looking down at the 2 men groveling before her. A sense of satisfaction washed over her. Evil people needed others to bring them to heel. For the next 2 days, all 3 remained trapped inside the house, never stepping outside. They circled around Shi Jingwei nonstop. The elder son cooked every meal, baking flatbread, steamed buns, and stuffed buns from dawn till dusk. No one could imagine how he managed, crippled and racked with constant pain. It seemed the threat of death unlocked hidden reserves of endurance. Time and again, his hands were blistered and burned raw over the fire. The younger boy's only duties were making the bed and massaging Shi Jingwei whenever she wanted. The elder son burned with jealousy. He had thought he could rest after exhausting labor each day. But there was no reprieve at night. His nerves stayed frayed. If Shi Jingwei wanted water in the middle of the night, he had to bring it instantly. Any delay brought punishment. He endured endless torment. Lu Erga remained defiant at first. But after witnessing his son's suffering, he fell silent, silently grieving for them. He glanced at his broken limbs and felt a flicker of relief. Being crippled meant he was spared the heaviest chores. His relief did not last long. Even if he could not manage strenuous work, Shi Jingwei had no intention of leaving him in peace. "Stitch a sachet for me." Shi Jingwei thrust cloth and thread into Lu Ergu's mouth, ignoring his stunned expression. Lu Ergu blinked in shock. A sachet? Him? This woman was truly cruel. He could not move his hands or feet. How was he supposed to thread a needle? Even if he managed it, he was a man. He had never sewn anything in his life. She was a demon. He tried to spit the fabric out to bargain with her. But Shi Jingwei shot him a cold glare. "Spit it out, and you will die." Lu Ergu froze. He clamped the cloth tightly between his teeth, breaking out in a cold sweat. He wanted to plead, yet dared not utter a sound. Panic overwhelmed him. Shi Jingwei stared at him coldly, waiting. Under her unyielding gaze, Lu Ergu pulled a miserable face and struggled to thread the needle using only his mouth. The task was inhuman. The sharp needle pricked his lips repeatedly, drawing blood. The thread slipped onto the floor time and again. He had to ask his younger son to pick it up and place it back between his teeth. The metallic taste of blood quickly filled his mouth. The pain was excruciating. He had never known how agonizing a needle prick could be. Compared to what he endured now, ancient torture methods paled in comparison. The needle and thread were far too fine. He could not succeed, no matter how hard he tried. He teetered on the edge of madness. If asked to name his greatest regret in life, Lu Ergu would answer without hesitation, buying Shi Jingwei. He never imagined he would suffer such torment. Over those 3 days, the 3 men endured unending agony. They longed for death. Yet whenever they thought their wounds would kill them, Shi Jingwei would jab them with a few needles to stop the bleeding, prolonging their suffering. Death eluded them, leaving them trapped in living torment. They seethed with hatred. They resented that Shi Jingwei treated the simple-minded younger boy far more leniently. It was unfair. "Dad, it's strange. No one has seen Lu Ergu's family leave their house for 3 days. Smoke rises from their chimney every day on schedule, though. Do you think our savior is still inside? Or has she fled? Something feels off." Li Guangyou had kept watch over Lu Ergu's home for 3 days, noticing nothing unusual. "There's no need to keep watching." Li's father pondered quietly, pushing aside his uneasy suspicions. It was not just them. The villagers had grown curious as well. Normally, the younger son would wander the village every day, and Lu Ergu and his elder son would head out to work. No one had spotted any of them for 3 days. How odd. If not for the smoke coming from their chimney, I'd think everyone inside perished. Exactly. Could they have angered the brigade leader and dare not show their faces? A woman whispered to the crowd. "It's possible. I saw the brigade leader yesterday. His face is swollen like a pumpkin. He lisps when he speaks, and only one tooth remains visible when he smiles. It was ridiculous to see." "Is that true?" Shi Jingwei knew nothing of the villagers' gossip. At that moment, she watched the brigade leader creep toward her and smiled. "Ah, you've arrived." Her smile sent a chill through the brigade leader. He wanted to beg her to stop smiling, but he held his tongue. He hastily handed over the documents. "Here are your travel tickets and cross-provincial letter of introduction." He also pressed every coin he had scraped together, 300 yuan in total, into her hands. His heart ached. It would take him years to save that sum. A trivial favor had led to all this disaster. Shi Jingwei flipped through the papers and nodded approvingly. "This will do. Give me the antidote." The brigade leader grew anxious when she made no move. "What antidote?" Shi Jingwei blinked innocently. As he stared at her in rage, she smiled meaningfully. "Oh, you mean those candy balls I made from cockroach and rat remains?" "You." Realizing he had been tricked, the brigade leader seethed. Yet he knew he could not challenge her, forcing his features into a stiff smile. "Heh, now you have what you wanted. I'll take my leave." He backed slowly toward the door, never taking his eyes off her. He breathed a huge sigh of relief once his hand closed around the door handle and she did nothing to stop him. Lu Ergu and his sons watched the whole scene, overcome with hope. Would the terrifying woman finally leave? It was too good to be true. TCH, Shi Jingwei vanished and reappeared behind the brigade leader in an instant, grabbing his shoulder just as she had the first time. The man nearly jumped out of his skin. "Mistress, what else do you want? Did I say you could leave? A group ought to stay together. You are not blood relatives. But you stood side by side. Shouldn't you share hardship together? I'm doing you a favor. Otherwise, they will resent you later." Shi Jingwei spoke as if she had his best interests at heart. The brigade leader glanced at Lu Urgu and his sons kneeling in a row. Their eyes were sunken, faces ashen as ghosts. Lu Urgu's limbs hung limply at his sides. A terrible premonition surged over him. He turned to run. Shi Jingwei did not let him escape. With a casual motion, she broke his arms and legs cleanly. You fight dirty." The brigade leader's eyes bulged. The next second, he could make no sound at all. His tongue had been cut out. "Heh, I never promised I would spare you. Consider yourself fortunate. Killing people is troublesome, otherwise you would be dead." She dragged him over to kneel alongside Lu Urgu and his sons. Lu Urgu and the others watched the brutal scene, trembling like frightened quails. They looked toward Shi Jingwei for mercy. Shi Jingwei's gaze swept slowly over each of them. Every time her eyes landed on someone, they shuddered. Her gaze settled finally on Lu Urgu. He felt as though the king of Yama had singled him out. Fear clutched his throat. He threw himself flat on the ground, voice shaking. "Spare me, I beg you. I want to live. I am already broken. I only made a mistake any parent might make. Can you not forgive me? I swear I will never repeat it. TCH, rest assured, I will not kill you. I simply want all of you to remain together." Before Lu Urgu could process her words, she cut out his tongue as well. "There. Now you truly belong together." Shi Jingwei tossed the bloodied tongue onto the ground casually and brushed off her hands. She glanced around the house. Seeing nothing else of value, she walked to the kitchen. She stored all the rice, flour, lard, eggs, steamed buns and flatbread into her spatial storage. With that, she turned and slipped out into the night without a backward glance. Elsewhere, the brigade leader's wife recalled what her husband had told her before he left. A strange sense of unease lingered in her heart. He had said that if he failed to return by midnight, she should gather people and head to Lu Urgu's house. He'd been acting extremely strange these past few days. When she asked who'd knocked out his teeth, he wouldn't say a word. When she pressed him to explain what had happened, he remained silent, only begging her for money over and over again. All he did was rush out the door, claiming he was endlessly busy. She could not summon energy for anything, staring fixedly at the clock. Lost in chaotic thoughts, when her right eyelid began twitching violently. They say left eye twitches foretell fortune, right eye twitches foretell misfortune. Could it be? Her mind drifted to the rumors that Lu Urgu's family had trafficked women and the fact that the village brigade leader had turned odd ever since that night. Suddenly, the brigade leader's wife felt as though she had uncovered a massive secret. She rushed out of the room at once and began shouting across the village. "Everyone come quick. Hurry. My husband found proof that Lu Urgu's family traffics women. They must be threatening him. He snuck out tonight with some money, planning to rescue that woman. He hasn't sent any word back. He could be fighting for his life. Come help me save my husband. He's in terrible danger right now. He needs our help." The brigade leader's wife had always had a fiery temper. She ran toward Lu Urgu's house, shouting as she went. Her voice drew the attention of every villager. Everyone had already grown curious about the Lu family's odd behavior these days. When they heard the brigade leader might be in mortal danger, they swarmed after her, eager to see what unfolded. Is this really true? Good heavens! Is Lu Urgu bold enough to harm the brigade leader? Does he want to be run out of the village? Wait a minute, that doesn't add up. When we went to confront Lu Urgu before, the brigade leader defended him, insisted he could never do such a thing. Right? What on earth is going on? The villagers' eyes burned with curiosity, their hunger for gossip at a fever pitch. They sprinted forward as if the wind carried their feet. Even Li Guangyao blended into the crowd, following along out of curiosity. The brigade leader's wife and most villagers assumed the brigade leader had fallen victim to Lu Urgu's plot, and they advanced warily. But when they arrived, they found the courtyard gate tightly shut. They pushed their way inside. A collective gasp rippled through everyone present. What is this scene? We thought Lu Urgu was plotting against the brigade leader. But they look thick as thieves. Why aren't they sleeping on the beds? All four of them are lined up on the cold ground. How can they bear resting on such frigid dirt? What's that bloody mess over there? Did someone leave a pig's tongue here? One villager let out a laugh at the sight. Another sharp-eyed villager cut him off quickly. That's no pig's tongue, that's a human tongue. They aren't just lying on the ground. Look at their twisted legs. They were kneeling before they were knocked unconscious. You're right. Hey, look at Lu Urgu's right hand, all wrapped up in bandages. And his mouth. Swollen bright red, full of fresh wounds. Among the villagers, some were suspicious, some horrified, and a few even found the scene absurd. Yet none dared step forward first. Then the brigade leader's wife spotted blood crusted at the corner of her husband's mouth. She threw herself at him and shook his body frantically. "Husband, wake up. Please wake up. Why would you sleep out here instead of coming home? If I'd known you were here resting, I wouldn't have summoned everyone." Now we're the laughingstock of the whole village. Her complaints died away as she sensed something wrong. The brigade leader stirred awake. Upon seeing the crowd, he grew frantic, flailing his arms and making garbled noises as he pointed toward the doorway. He tried to bolt outside, determined to catch Sher Jingwei. But he forgot his limbs had been broken. He stumbled and crashed heavily onto the dirt. What happened? What in the world happened? Lu Ergu and the other two men also regained consciousness. Unlike the brigade leader, who burned with rage and a desire to hunt Sher Jingwei down, they wished they would never lay eyes on her again for the rest of their lives. Lu Ergu exchanged a glance with his simple-minded elder brother, and overwhelming relief washed over them. They crawled toward each other on their knees and embraced, overcome with joy at surviving. Tears streamed down their faces. They had escaped alive from a ruthless killer. Even though they could no longer speak and could not walk, they did not have to endure her torture any longer. Having needles jammed through their mouths had been pure agony. At least the simple-minded brother had only lost his tongue. His limbs remained intact. He could take care of them from now on. Thinking of this, the two men laughed and wept as if celebrating the Lunar New Year. The simple-minded brother hurried over to embrace his elder brother and the brigade leader. Even crippled and immobile, the two men shared the same thought. They glared at him with revulsion and shoved him away with their heads. "Stay away from us, you fool. This is all your fault." The villagers stared, utterly stunned. Are they out of their minds? They're hurt so badly, yet they're laughing and crying. I agree. They used to dote on that brother of his, sharing every good thing with him. Everyone envied them. Why do they hate him now? Good heavens! Who could be so heartless to rip out your tongue and break all your limbs? The brigade leader's wife pried open her husband's mouth and saw the empty space where his tongue had been. She collapsed to the ground in terror, feeling as though the sky had caved in. Her face drained of color, and she beat her thighs helplessly. "What do we do? What on earth will I do? You're like this now, and you took all our savings. How am I supposed to raise the children, care for our elderly parents, and earn money to support the whole family alone? You fool. Tell me everything. What exactly happened?" She screamed and sobbed, pounding her husband's shoulders. At the thought of tending to a husband who could no longer care for himself, raising children, supporting elders, and earning a living all on her own, she saw nothing but despair ahead. Agony surged through the brigade leader's shoulders, his broken limbs and empty mouth throbbing relentlessly. His face twisted with pain. He longed to speak, to shout, to write down every detail and tell everyone Sher Jingwei was responsible. He wanted them to report her to the authorities and have her arrested. But he could not utter a single word, nor grip a pen. Damn her. Sher Jingwei had planned for this exact moment. She had done this on purpose. That vicious, scheming woman. Though he seethed with hatred, wishing he could tear her apart, he could only weep silently, overwhelmed by powerlessness. Good grief. How did all of them end up without tongues? Except for the simple-minded brother, every one of the others has broken arms and legs. This clearly wasn't done by Lu Ergu. The simple brother couldn't inflict such harm either. How terrible this is. Some might think death would be kinder. Once they fully grasped the severity of the injuries, the villagers drew back, watching the wounded men with pity and unease. Fear spread through the crowd. Even Li Guangyao felt a jolt of shock. After a moment of thought, he knew Sher Jingwei was behind all of this. While he thought her actions brutal, he recalled everything the men had done to her. An idea crossed his mind, and he raised his voice in a shrill tone. Perhaps they committed unspeakable evils. Why else would only they suffer such retribution? His words silenced the villagers. Wild theories began swirling through their heads. One villager's eyes suddenly widened. Wait, remember 3 days ago? Everyone spoke of a female student who was trafficked here. We demanded answers from Lu Ergu back then, and the brigade leader spoke up for him. Could it be they killed that student, and her spirit has come for revenge? He lowered his voice and spoke the last sentence in an eerie murmur. A gust of wind swept past, and every villager shuddered. Stop talking. Don't drag us into this. We try to help her. Don't haunt us. Quiet. Are you all out of your minds? Spreading superstition can get you arrested. Bring trouble down on yourselves if you want, but leave me out of it. We ought to call the police immediately. Shi Jingwei had no idea the brigade leader had laid further plans against her. She already knew the route out of the village. She left Lu Ergu's courtyard and headed straight for the village entrance. Entertainment was scarce in rural areas, and electricity was only just beginning to spread. Lu Village remained a backward hamlet. Kerosene lamps and candles were still the main sources of light. Though nearly every household owned a kerosene lamp, kerosene was rationed and required special coupons to purchase. To save resources, most villagers blew out their lights and went to bed soon after dinner. Moonlight peeked through scattered dark clouds, flickering dimly. The village road stretched into pitch-black darkness, broken only by occasional barking dogs, birdsong, and the chirp of insects. The atmosphere felt strangely ominous. Ordinary people would never dare travel such a dark path, unable to see what lay ahead. Yet Shi Jingwei grew excited. The dirt road beneath her was uneven but passable. She pulled a brand-new motorcycle out of her spatial storage. She swung one leg over the seat, fixed a flashlight to the front, and gripped the handlebars. Vroom! The motorcycle roared to life. She shot forward like a gust of wind. The sudden engine noise sent birds and insects fleeing in all directions. Shi Jingwei paid no mind. The county seat stood 60 kilometers away from Lu Village, along a winding dirt road. No trains ran to this county. She needed to reach the city to catch long-distance transport, another 40 kilometers further on. Ordinary villagers would have to travel by ox cart or tractor, enduring hours of bumpy travel for 3 to 8 hours. She had no wish to suffer such a journey. She planned to travel through the night unnoticed. Whoosh! After riding for roughly an hour, strong winds suddenly picked up. Lightning flickered in the distant sky, briefly illuminating the landscape. Shi Jingwei's expression darkened, a bad premonition rising in her chest. Of course it would start raining right now. Still, she kept riding along the mountain trail, scanning her surroundings for shelter. Her eyes lit up when she spotted a triangular makeshift hut standing amid crop fields. Its walls were tightly woven from dry corn stalks, looking sturdy enough to withstand rain. Large raindrops began pelting her skin, stinging slightly. Without hesitation, she stored the motorcycle and stepped into the hut. Inside stood a simple wooden bed, built for farmers watching over their crops overnight. She pulled a compact waterproof tent from her space and set it on the ground. She lay down comfortably inside, ready to listen to the rain and rest through the night. She had missed the scent of damp earth mixed with rainwater for a very long time. The aroma calmed her heart completely. It was wonderful to relax without constant tension. In the apocalypse, rain always meant the zombies would evolve further, often triggering massive hordes. Rainfall had always spelled disaster for survivors. She expected her nerves, sharpened by years of end-of-the-world survival, to keep her awake. Instead, she quickly fell into a steady sleep. Bang! Bang! She did not know how long she had slept when sharp, urgent gunfire jolted her awake. Gunshots? Am I back in the apocalypse? Damn it. Shi Jingwei shot upright inside the tent, sharp vigilance and killing intent flashing in her eyes. Convinced she had returned to the wasteland, she stormed outside, ready to fight hordes of zombies. She stepped out to find dawn had not yet broken. Dew hung thick over the golden rice paddies. There was no putrid stench of zombies anywhere. The gunfire continued echoing faintly from the woods nearby. She was not back in the apocalypse. Someone was engaged in a shootout. Interesting. Shi Jingwei arched an eyebrow. The woods lay along the same route she needed to take. She packed away her tent and headed toward the sound. She wondered who dared exchange gunfire out in the open in the 1970s. They possessed extraordinary recklessness. Bang! 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 As she drew closer, gunshots and explosions grew clearer. Shi Jingwei glanced around, then teleported onto the top of a roughly 10-meter-tall tree. 30 seconds after she settled herself, two men around 185 centimeters tall, dressed in black, moved with sharp, wary movements. They tossed an explosive forward before guiding a pale, gray-haired middle-aged man beneath the tree. The middle-aged man clutched a parcel tightly to his chest. His hands trembled violently, his expression mixing terror and worry. You go. Your leg is bleeding. This is all my fault. I dragged you into this. Let me bandage your wound. The younger of the two men spoke anxiously, tearing a strip of cloth to wrap the injury. His voice shook. He had never faced such mortal danger. How could they track us down? No one else knew our route. Weigwa, take Professor Su and leave immediately. I'll hold them off. Do not let Professor Su fall into their hands. The handsome man everyone called Yuga grasped his arm, his features grave. He paused, staring firmly at the younger man with unwavering resolve. Listen carefully. That parcel holds vital aerospace research data. Even if we lose our lives, we must guarantee Professor Su's safety. If you escape alive, find the traitor responsible for this leak. Go. He shoved Wei-Go forward hard. Xiaojun and I will slow them down. Wei-Guo's eyes stung with tears, but he knew there was no time for hesitation. He saluted sharply, hoisted the professor onto his back, and fled toward the tree line. The professor looked back at Yuga in anguish and called out, "Stay alive. Yuga, run. They outnumber us heavily. We have no more explosives left." Two soldiers who had been covering their retreat raced over, anxiety etched into their hardened faces. They grabbed Yuga by each arm, ducking behind trees to flee, firing back at their pursuers every few steps. All three men were excellent marksmen. Even wounded, Yuga landed precise shots, taking down enemies with every pull of the trigger. Shi Jingwei watched everything unfold. She summoned a pair of binoculars with a thought. Soon she could see the full layout of the fight. Only 3 men stood on Yuji's side, while roughly 10 foes pursued them. More importantly, her gaze drifted toward Weigua and the fleeing professor. Unaware of the threat, 5 more enemies lay hidden in the bushes, waiting to ambush them. They're out of ammunition. Charge forward now. The enemy spies, hearing no more gunfire from their targets, brightened with excitement. They waved their hands, advancing fearlessly. Damn it all. The 2 men beside Yuga pulled the triggers of their guns repeatedly, only to hear empty clicks. They threw their useless firearms to the ground in frustration. Trapped, the 3 men had run out of ammunition and could only run for their lives. Bang! Bang! Now knowing their targets were defenseless, the enemy advanced without caution, bullets whistling past them nonstop. Though the 3 moved carefully, bullets traveled without mercy. Bang! Bang! 2 more shots rang out. One of the men beside Yuga was struck in the leg. His knees buckled, and he dropped to one knee. "Who's he?" Yuga reached for him at once, trying to pull him away. Heavy footsteps closed in behind them. The enemy spies surrounded the 3. Huzi, Yuga, and their companions stood back to back, drawing daggers from their waists, staring sharply at their encirclers. Well now. The enemy leader glanced at the glinting blades and blew gently on the barrel of his pistol, smirking contemptuously. "Do you honestly think your knives can outpace my bullets? I'll fight you to the death." Huzi flushed with rage and lunged forward, ready to charge. Yuga grabbed him and held him back. Even facing certain defeat, his expression remained calm as still water. He did not so much as frown. He kept his eyes locked on the enemy, scanning the surrounding woods constantly, searching for any chance to turn the tide. "Captain, we've got them." Right amid the tense standoff, 5 men appeared into view, grinning smugly as they dragged Weigua and Professor Su forward. Weigua hung his head, too ashamed to meet Yuji's eyes, drowning in remorse and self-blame. The perpetual calm on Yuji's face completely crumbled. His features darkened instantly. His fists clenched tight enough to bulge the veins winding up his forearms. He was plainly consumed with towering rage. If he was furious, the hot-tempered Huzi was far worse. His eyes blazed red with fury, and he slammed his fists hard against the ground, his gaze brimming with rage and bitter frustration. They all knew the mission had been a total failure. Well, if it isn't Battalion Commander Liu, famous for never letting his emotions show on his face. "You look absolutely livid right now," the enemy ringleader jeered. "Want to take a swing at me?" Confident his captives could no longer escape his grasp, the enemy leader carried himself with unbridled arrogance. Yuga lifted his head, sharp icy eyes locking firmly onto the ringleader's triumphant, loathsome face, burning with the urge to kill the man on the spot. "TSK, that murderous glare of yours. You'd flay me alive if you could, wouldn't you? Too bad you'll never get the chance." The ringleader's gaze drifted mockingly down to Yuji's injured legs. A distinguished battalion commander, reduced to a cripple for the rest of his days. He wore a crafty smirk and boldly stepped forward 2 paces. "Would you like to know who leaked your plans?" "Hee. I'm not telling you a thing." "Spit on you. You traitor. You have no right to speak to Commander you like that. You beast. If I ever get free, I'll fill your body full of bullet holes." Huzi held Yuga in the highest regard and could not abide such insults directed at his superior. Overcome with anger, He hurled a dagger straight toward the ringleader's neck. The cocky ringleader's pupils constricted sharply. He dodged sideways out of pure instinct just in time. Before he could breathe a sigh of relief, Yugo lunged forward with hawk-like, sharp eyes fixed squarely on his target, stabbing at the enemy leader with his dagger. The two tumbled into the thick grass in a brutal grapple, wrestling fiercely for possession of the handgun. When the ringleader nearly seized the pistol, Yugo kicked the weapon far away in one violent motion. With the enemy leader distracted, Yugo rolled on top of him in an instant, driving his dagger toward the man's chest with every ounce of strength he had. The ringleader fought back fiercely, clamping both hands hard around the dagger's hilt. Both men's eyes blazed red, each desperate to end the other's life. Lying pinned on the ground, the ringleader could not match Yuji's strength with only one free hand. Yugo forced the blade through the man's left hand, then drove it deep into his chest. Warm blood gushed out relentlessly. Damn you! Agony seared through his chest. The ringleader's eyes bulged with rage as he roared hoarsely, "Shoot him! Blow his head open! Damn it all! Boss!" His subordinates finally snapped out of their shock and raised their firearms toward Yugo. Bang, bang, bang! Gunshots rang out, yet the man who collapsed to the ground was none other than their own leader, not Yugo as they had expected. "Who's there? Show yourself." The enemy soldiers panicked, gripping their guns tightly as they scanned their surroundings warily. Bang, bang, bang! More gunfire echoed. Before they could spot their attacker, they dropped one after another into pools of their own blood. The moment the enemy soldiers prepared to fire, Yugo threw himself forward, grabbed the discarded pistol, and fought back without hesitation. Huzi had been shot through both legs. The other two operatives snatched Huzi up and hurled him to safety the second Yugo opened fire. They rolled out of the encirclement in fluid movements, tackled nearby enemies to the ground, and wrested their firearms away to join the counterattack. "I'll take every last one of you down." The area erupted into chaotic combat, filled with the crunch of hand-to-hand combat and the constant crack of gunfire. "Commander Yu, toss me a gun." Huzi lay hidden in the grass, his legs crippled, watching the battle anxiously and aching to join the fight. No one could spare a moment to assist him. The enemy still held numerical advantage, and no one dared let their guard slip for a single second. Professor Su, who had been trembling in terror, spotted a handgun lying roughly 1 meter away amid the chaos and cautiously inched over to retrieve it. A bullet streaked toward his forehead from a distant position. Yugo sensed the incoming threat and whipped his head around, pupils blown wide. "Professor, get down now." Professor Su froze in fright, his legs trembling too badly to move an inch. He could only stare helplessly as the bullet closed in fast, poised to pierce his torso. Yugo sprinted to save him, only to see Huzi take another bullet to the arm. One enemy soldier had lined up a shot directly at Huzi's head. Curse this situation. Yugo had no choice but to swivel his gun toward the new threat. Everyone thought Professor Su was doomed, until a crisp sound of disapproval cut through the din. A blade formed from invisible energy collided with the bullet. The ethereal blade dissipated on impact, and the bullet veered sharply off its original path. "You folks are putting up a pretty sad fight. You're far too slow. Allow me to lend a hand." The clear, relaxed voice of Shi Jingwei drifted down from above. All fighters looked upward in surprise. Seated casually on a thick tree branch overhead was a woman dressed in a white dress, her long legs dangling loosely. Her stunning appearance stunned every single person present. "It's you. Did you kill our captain just now?" The soldiers recovered from their momentary awe and noticed a firearm in the woman's hand. Their admiration curdled into rage. "TSK. Your noise ruined my moment watching the fight unfold down there." Shi Jingwei chuckled softly and leaped down from the treetop. Her white skirt fluttered gracefully in the wind as she descended, looking like a spirit descended from the heavens. Unseen by anyone, she materialized 2 spatial daggers in each palm with a thought. With a casual flick of her wrists mid-fall, the glowing white blades sliced through the air toward the shouting enemies. Squelch! Her movements were impossibly swift. The soldiers had barely finished chambering their rounds when the spatial blades slit their throats silently. Shi Jingwei landed firmly on the ground. Thuds echoed as enemy troops collapsed dead one after another, felled with effortless precision. Yugo and his comrades stared at the woman's calm smile, then swept their gazes over the fallen enemy bodies, overcome with shock. None of them had caught sight of how she had eliminated the men. Everything had unfolded in the blink of an eye. Her abilities were nothing short of extraordinary. Shi Jingwei paid no mind to their stunned expressions. She had no intention of performing kind deeds without acknowledgement. She stepped forward, tapped Yuga gently on the shoulder with a warm smile after landing. You owe me a huge favor, soldier. Every single one of you would have perished here without my intervention. We offer our deepest gratitude for saving our lives. Regaining his composure immediately, Yuga saluted her with a solemn military gesture. I am Liu Yubai from the Southwest Military Region. I thank you sincerely for rescuing me and my men. May I ask your name and place of residence? Once we return to base, I will submit an official report to command to secure proper commendations and rewards for you. Shi Jingwei from Shanghai. She answered without hesitation. She knew from the original timeline that her parents would soon be sent to a remote labor camp. Receiving favor from a high-ranking local officer would greatly ease her family's hardships later on. She marveled at this fortunate coincidence. There's no need for such formal addresses. Feel free to call me Sister Yu from now on, Shi Jingwei said warmly, her gaze lingering gently on Liu Yubai's features. She had already noticed his striking good looks from the tree, and his sharp, handsome features were even more remarkable up close. Liu Yubai had facial features sculpted with hard, defined bones and sharp slanted eyebrows paired with almond-shaped eyes that should have carried soft warmth. Instead, his stern expression and permanently pressed thin lips gave him a naturally aloof, cold demeanor, creating a striking contrast in his temperament. His bearing reminded Shi Jingwei of the noble cat she had cared for in her previous life, before the apocalypse, stirring an urge to converse with him in a casual, friendly tone. The perpetually icy expression on Liu Yubai's pale, injured face fractured completely, and he fought the urge to twitch his jaw. Sister Yu? Had he misheard her? This woman appeared quite youthful, yet she insisted on such an elder moniker. He brushed off the odd sensation of being teased as his own imagination, assuming she simply misjudged their age difference. After a long pause, he fixed her with a curious stare and spoke in a low tone. I believe I am older than you. Sister Yu. I'll call you Sister Yu if you won't. Huzi endured the sharp pain of his severe blood loss and struck his own fist hard enough to stay conscious. Dragging his wounded body across the grass toward Shi Jingwei, his voice brimming with pure admiration. You're incredible. Are you a service member as well? How did you master firearms so skillfully? Have you trained in traditional martial arts? Your moves were absolutely phenomenal. His round, bright eyes shone with undisguised admiration, reminding Shi Jingwei of the stray puppy she had raised in her old world. She reached out and ruffled the soft hair on the young soldier's head fondly. Just as she suspected, his hair was soft to the touch. Sister Yu? Huzi froze for a second, his cheeks flushing bright red in embarrassment as he stumbled backward a step. He regarded her with wariness, suspecting the woman had overly casual social habits. Shi Jingwei cleared her throat awkwardly, glancing down at his severely wounded legs before patting her chest confidently with an encouraging look. Since you've addressed me so warmly, I'll ensure your legs make a full recovery. You will regain complete mobility with no lasting impairments. Really? Do you know medical treatment? Huzi's sorrow faded instantly, crawling forward with renewed hope, his eyes glowing brighter than ever. His elation faded quickly into a dejected sigh. Don't comfort me falsely. The bullet pierced straight through my bone, and I've lost far too much blood. My vision is already growing fuzzy at the edges. You don't carry any medical supplies with you. Even a skilled healer cannot treat such wounds without proper equipment. At minimum, you could extract the bullet, but the nearest hospital is over 60 kilometers away. We have no vehicles for transport. My comrades would struggle greatly carrying me there over such distance. My leg will most certainly have to be amputated. I fear I will never stand alongside my brothers on the battlefield ever again. His voice softened with grief and quiet sobs. He had worked tirelessly to enlist in the military, only to suffer such a devastating injury on a single mission. Leave this to me, just wait a moment. Shi Jingwei smiled mysteriously and hurried off before the stunned soldier's eyes. Sister Yu, where are you going? Huzi reached out to grab her sleeve, but blacked out instantly, collapsing into Professor Su's waiting arms. Wei Guo and Xiao Jun rushed to Liu Yubai's side the moment the danger passed. With no formal medical tools available, they could only apply crude makeshift bandages. Liu Yubai surveyed the bodies scattered across the ground, then stared intently in the direction Shi Jingwei had left. He issued a sharp order to his men. Stabilize Huzi's injuries with emergency bandages. We depart immediately afterward. Should we wait for the woman who helped us? Liu Yubai was about to reply that her mysterious skills and impeccable marksmanship meant she required no protection from their group. They were the ones who had been a burden to her. Before he could finish his sentence, Shi Jingwei returned in quick strides, carrying a full medical kit in her hands. Seeing them preparing to evacuate the wounded soldier, she frowned firmly. Set him down at once. I promised I would save his leg, and I intend to keep that word. The soldiers looked toward Liu Yubai for confirmation. He nodded his approval, and they gently lowered Huzi to the ground. Shi Jingwei knelt beside him and untied the rough cloth wrapped around his leg. Fresh blood seeped steadily from the open wound. She pressed her palm against the injury and activated her healing ability through her mind's focus to seal the damaged blood vessels. The bleeding stopped instantly. She retrieved forceps, iodophor, and other supplies from the medical kit. With precise movements, she clamped onto the embedded bullet and plucked it out cleanly. Her healing power continued working silently throughout the process, clearing metallic debris left by the bullet while repairing fractured bone. The wound sealed completely without leaving even the faintest scar, eliminating any risk of chronic pain or weather-induced soreness in later years. To avoid arousing excessive suspicion about her unnatural capabilities, she inserted a few fine acupuncture needles into key pressure points around the injury. The entire treatment lasted merely 3 to 5 seconds. By the time the others processed what had happened, she had sprinkled medicinal powder over the wound. Huzi only winced faintly during the physical repair, showing no other signs of pain or distress. All finished. My specialized medicinal formula will fully mend his leg. He will run and move without restriction and suffer no barriers to his military service. Expending this level of healing far exceeded her standard power limits. Straightening to her feet, Shi Jingwei's face drained of all color. Dizziness washed over her, and she staggered backward unsteadily. Liu Yubai had watched her every movement closely. Reacting faster than his conscious thoughts, he stepped forward swiftly to steady her. Are you all right? He guided her to lean against a tree trunk and noticed her sweat-soaked, ashen face, far paler than his own blood-depleted features. Genuine concern flickered across his expression. I'm fine. Shi Jingwei looked up at him with a gentle smile, leaning back against the tree with her arms loosely folded. Her gaze swept over Liu Yubai's figure before settling on his wounded legs. Liu Yubai felt unnaturally exposed under her measured gaze. Shi Jingwei met his eyes again and raised an eyebrow with a mild grin. If you're willing to call me Sister Yu, I can extract the bullets lodged in your legs for you. Liu Yubai's grateful expression hardened into a stern frown. He fought the strong urge to turn and walk away. A respected battalion commander being playfully teased by a civilian woman would bring endless teasing from his troops if word spread back to camp. He could not fathom how to process this woman's unreservedly easygoing manner. Huzi and the other soldiers watched the exchange with undisguised curiosity, their mouths hanging open in surprise. They silently gave Shi Jingwei wordless praise for daring to speak so casually to their notoriously stern commander. Even Professor Su, clutching his research documents to his chest, peeked out to watch the unusual interaction with quiet amusement. Liu Yubai had the instinct to reprimand her, yet her warm, earnest smile stayed his hand. He reminded himself she was their lifesaver, and courtesy was owed to anyone who had spared their lives. He gave a formal military salute once more, his voice low and solemn. I offer my sincere gratitude again for your assistance, Comrade Shi. Should you ever require any favor from myself or my unit, do not hesitate to make your request known. He deliberately avoided responding to her request for a casual honorific. Shi Jingwei shrugged casually in response. Sister Yu. My leg still aches faintly, but I can move it now. Huzi regained consciousness abruptly, color returning to his previously pallid face. Though unconscious earlier, he had heard everything that transpired and knew Shi Jingwei had healed his critical wounds. Overcome with overwhelming joy, he lurched upright and threw his arms around her lower legs tightly. Easy now. Don't strain yourself recklessly. The bullet has been removed, but severe bone trauma cannot heal this quickly, even with treatment. You sustained a full penetrating bone wound, such immediate mobility should not be possible. Weigua shot him a reproachful glare and hurried forward to prop him up. But Huzi could feel his leg had never felt better. He shrugged off Weigua's hands and paced back and forth on the spot a couple of times. He even hopped up and down lightly. His injured leg felt perfectly fine, without the slightest twinge of pain. Is this for real? Not just Weigua, but Liu Yubai was utterly stunned. They worked with firearms every single day, so gunshot wounds were nothing out of the ordinary for them. Soldiers had suffered bullet wounds through both legs many times before. Even after military surgeons treated the wounds, patients still needed time to recover. How on earth had Shi Jingwei pulled this off? She had only removed the bullets after all. His thoughts drifted to the powder she had poured over the wounds in the final moments. Could that powder be the cause of this miraculous recovery? What kind of medicinal powder possessed such extraordinary curative effects? Or was it the few acupuncture pricks she had administered at the end? Could traditional Chinese medicine wield such astonishing healing power? Liu Yubai fixed his gaze on Shi Jingwei, his eyes brimming with intense curiosity. He had long heard tales of folk divine healers. If this medicinal powder could be adopted for military use, countless troop casualties could be drastically reduced on the battlefield. His eyes suddenly lit up with excitement as he looked toward Shi Jingwei. Holy smokes, it actually works. Miss Jingwei, thank you so much for saving my brother. Your medical skills are unlike anything I have ever seen. After overcoming their shock, the other soldiers swarmed around her with undisguised admiration. Huzi gave Shi Jingwei a reassuring look that promised he would repay the favor, then winked repeatedly at Liu Yubai. You go, our Miss Jingwei's medical prowess is unparalleled. All she asked for was for you to call her elder sister. Hurry up and say it. Don't worry, we'll keep this between us and never breathe a word to anyone back at the military compound. Absolutely. The rest of the men chimed in to egg him on. Cut it out, all of you. Liu Yubai snapped at the group, yet a faint sense of hesitation stirred within his heart. He recalled her earlier words. Her treatment might very well leave no lingering after-effects whatsoever. Even if he rushed to a formal military hospital right this minute, he would never regain full mobility this quickly. He steeled his resolve. It was just a simple address, after all. It was hardly a big deal. The mere thought of saying the word made his cheeks flush faintly. Ahem. Huzi, take the others to scout the surrounding area for any remaining hostile forces. Got it, you go. Huzi and his companions exchanged knowing grins. They were burning with curiosity to hear their stoic, unyielding superior utter the honorific. But they opted to spare him some dignity and departed. Once the men were gone, Liu Yubai stepped slowly toward Shi Jingwei. Though he had mentally prepared himself, he could not bring himself to meet her gaze. Terrified she would spot his bright crimson face. He stared at the ground, his voice low and slightly hoarse as he spoke. Elder sister. Liu Yubai maintained an outward air of calm and composure, yet his tone had grown rough with nervousness. A close observer would notice the red tint spreading across his earlobes. His voice came out stiff, layered with the steady resolve typical of a career soldier, as if a straightforward young man had forced himself to step outside his comfort zone. Shi Jingwei could not hold back her laughter. He was such a sincere, passionate young man, full of delightful contrast between his tough exterior and shy inner self. Beneath his expectant stare, she shook her head playfully. Try again. Soften your tone a little. Ease up your voice. Liu Yubai's face burned bright red instantly, staring at her with a look of aggrievement. He watched her narrow her eyes into slits like a cunning little fox, his teeth grinding slightly in exasperation. Still, the prospect of a full recovery for his injury outweighed his embarrassment. He lifted the tone of his voice, his crisp tone taking on a warm magnetic lilt. Elder sister, well done, good boy. Watching him slump forward as if drained of all his usual stern energy, Shi Jingwei burst into loud laughter. Ha ha. The whole scene was far too amusing. She was tempted to tease him further, but she knew pushing too hard would make him genuinely annoyed. She quietly retrieved a crystal core from her personal spatial storage and absorbed roughly a third of its energy. Once her supernatural abilities had replenished a fair amount, she stowed the core away immediately. She was far too short on supplies to afford careless consumption. Sit down. She gestured for Liu Yubai to take a seat on a boulder and began carefully tending to his leg wound. This little bit of teasing had been nothing more than a harmless whim for her and faded from her mind quickly. She did not notice the quiet stir of emotion rising in the young soldier's heart. Liu Yubai's gaze wandered over the slender curve of her neck, her delicate side profile, and her long eyelashes fluttering like butterfly wings each time she blinked. For no clear reason, his throat felt inexplicably parched. His heart skipped a beat, and he had no idea where to rest his eyes. He had originally intended to study her treatment techniques closely to pinpoint what set her methods apart from standard medical practices. Instead, his mind wandered aimlessly the entire time she dressed his injury. By the moment she announced the treatment was finished, Liu Yubai felt a soothing warmth spread throughout his injured leg. Every trace of pain completely washed away. His leg felt as if it had never sustained a gunshot wound in the first place. Shock flooded his features once more. He stood and took a few tentative steps, inner turmoil raging fiercely. He might as well have encountered a divine healer. Huzi had told him the treatment was effective, but experiencing it firsthand proved the effect was nothing short of miraculous. No standard medical procedure could erase all pain from a fresh gunshot wound instantaneously. A faint itching sensation lingered on the wound site, a clear sign damaged tissue was actively regenerating. The entire experience bordered on the unbelievable. "Well now," Shi Jingwei drawled. "You look utterly stunned. Could it be you've grown admiring of my skills?" She knew her peerless medical skills were the root of his shock, yet she waved a finger lightly in front of his face to tease him. Liu Yubai snapped his line of sight back in an instant, the corners of his mouth twitching awkwardly. There was no denying her outstanding skill, yet she had a rather playful, mischievous streak. Under normal circumstances, he would have reprimanded her for teasing a serving soldier. But she was his savior. He had to keep reminding himself of that fact repeatedly. He took several deep breaths to suppress the urge to react sharply. "Thank you, Comrade Shi." After a brief pause, he pulled a first-class merit medal out of the side pocket of his dark military trousers and pressed it into her palm. His eyes locked onto hers with complete sincerity. "Take this medal as a token of my gratitude. Should you ever need assistance with any matter that does not jeopardize national security or party interests, I will do everything in my power to help you." Shi Jingwei glanced casually at the medal. When she caught sight of the gilded engraving marking it as a first-class merit award, her eyes lit up with delight. She accepted the medal neatly and joked in a mock bashful tone. "Oh my, is this meant to be a token of gratitude with deeper meaning? Folks often speak of repaying a life-saving debt with lifelong devotion. Are you hoping to stay by my side to repay me? If that is the case, you will have to join a lengthy queue behind several others already waiting." Liu Yubai's normally composed expression crumbled completely. Huzi and the other soldiers hiding nearby to listen in, alongside the perpetually reserved Professor Su, could not suppress fond smiles. They pinched their own thighs hard to stifle outright laughter, yet muffled chuckles still escaped their lips. "Hey, count us in for the queue. Elder sister, we also wish to repay your kindness. Can we cut the line? We may not be as handsome as you go, but we have plenty of fine qualities to offer. Pick us instead." Some of the men even playfully contrasted themselves against Liu Yubai. "You men have made critical mistakes on this mission. Every single one of you will submit a 5,000-word self-criticism report upon our return to base." Liu Yubai shot the group a sharp glare, his calm voice sharp with discipline. He looked back at Shi Jingwei with complicated emotions, all the soft feelings that had briefly stirred in his chest vanishing entirely. This woman was an unrepentant tease. Still, was there truly a long line of people eager to repay her kindness? Where would he stand in that line? "I was only joking," Shi Jingwei said quickly upon seeing his anger mount, his handsome cheeks puffed out like an angry puffer fish from holding back his frustration. "Do not be so easily riled as a grown man." Before Liu Yubai could fly into a proper temper, she patted his arm lightly, then waved farewell and turned to leave without a second glance. "I will keep this gift. We will likely cross paths again in the days ahead." Liu Yubai stared at her unrestrained retreating figure, lingering on her ambiguous parting words with quiet curiosity. Did this woman know him somehow? The faint, unique scent clinging to her still lingered in his nostrils. He shook his head and instantly reverted to his usual stern demeanor. Glancing at the corpses scattered across the ground, he issued new orders. "Gather all usable firearms. We move out immediately. We cannot rule out additional enemy ambushes. We must reach the military compound safely and quickly." His eyes darkened with cold resolve, his tone edged with icy ruthlessness. "It is high time the traitor who betrayed us paid for their crimes." "Yes, sir." All traces of amusement vanished from the soldiers' faces the second the command left his mouth. Their voices were laced with gritted fury, their gazes sharp with killing intent. Shi Jingwei paid no further thought to the soldiers' predicament. Helping them had been a casual good deed, and the medal might prove useful to her down the line. She had already flagged down a local farmer and climbed aboard his tractor. The ride was a jarring, turbulent experience. She gripped the metal railing tightly, yet the rough jolts sent her bouncing up and down against the hard seat like a spring, leaving her bottom throbbing with soreness. To make matters worse, the deafening rumble of the tractor engine numbed her arms and left her ears ringing nonstop. She could tolerate these discomforts to an extent, but the thick stench of diesel fuel, machine oil, billowing black exhaust smoke mixed with dust and wheat chaff whipping against her face, was utterly unbearable. The foul odor struck her as far more revolting than the rot permeating the post-apocalyptic world she had once lived in. She squeezed her eyes shut tight and clamped a hand over her nose to block out the smell, the fumes comparable to chemical weapons. Oddly enough, this rickety old tractor drew envious stares from every villager they passed along the road. Having endured as much as she could bear, she hopped off the tractor, found a secluded spot, and pulled the worn bicycle she had confiscated from Lu Urgu out of her spatial storage. To continue her journey. The bike rode roughly, its chain emitting loud creaks with every rotation of the pedals. Yet it was vastly preferable to the tractor. Truly frustrating. Her spatial storage held no modern bicycles, and motorcycles were extremely uncommon in this era. She dared not retrieve one from her space for daytime travel. Fortunately, the urban district was not far away. After roughly 3 hours of cycling, she arrived at the train station right on schedule to board her train. She had thought boarding the train would bring an end to her suffering, only to discover another nightmare waiting for her. Shi Jingwei fought her way into the overcrowded train carriage, her face squished against other passengers amid the crush before she could even voice her complaints. As soon as she stepped inside, a revolting blend of instant noodle broth, sweaty feet, body odor, and cigarette smoke flooded her nostrils. She felt her stomach churn violently. The stench bore an uncanny resemblance to the putrid air of the zombie apocalypse. She had acted without proper forethought. She ought to have purchased oranges to hold up to her nose as a makeshift air freshener. She cursed Shirin for everything she had endured. She would teach that false young lady a harsh lesson once they met again. Murderous intent flashed across her eyes, and she slammed her fist hard against the carriage wall. The passengers around her caught sight of her icy glare and scrambled backward in fright, clearing an empty bubble of space around her in an instant. Shi Jingwei blinked in confusion. Was she really that intimidating? Meanwhile in Shanghai at the Shi family residence. Achoo! Achoo! Shirin had been primping in front of her vanity mirror when she was seized by a fit of violent sneezes. Are you catching a cold? Shi's mother had been about to knock on the bedroom door when she heard the commotion. She pushed the door open in a panic and hurried over to pull her daughter into a worried embrace. Mother, what brings you here? I am perfectly fine. Shirin hastily tucked a handful of hidden items beneath her quilt before smiling sweetly up at her mother, who was fretting over her condition. Truly, I just caught a light chill from a draft. Shi's mother studied her daughter's complexion carefully and pressed her palm to Shi Yin's forehead to check for fever. Finding no sign of a temperature spike, she hurried to close the wide-open window and shot her daughter a chiding look. I have told you countless times to keep your bedroom window shut at night. The night breeze is cold, and your body has always been frail. Shirin wrapped her arms affectionately around her mother's arm and rested her head on her shoulder just as she had done in childhood. Mother, sing me the lullaby you used to hum for my younger sister. The mention of her younger daughter stirred a sharp twinge of grief in Madame Shi's eyes. Normally, she would have firmly refused such a request. Ever since Shi Jingwei had gone missing, the mere mention of her birth daughter filled Madame Shi with heartache. And any belongings tied to the girl would send her spiraling into sorrow. Shirin had begged her to sing the lullaby countless times before. Yet she had never once agreed, too consumed with grief over the thought of her real daughter suffering somewhere unknown. To Shi Yin's great surprise, Madame Shi paused for a moment, then stroked the top of her adopted daughter's soft hair with gentle affection. Her tone soft with pity. You really are an impossible child. She draped an arm over Shi Yin's shoulders and guided her to lie down on the bed. Shirin could scarcely believe her luck as she settled into the warm bed. Seconds later, she threw her arms around Madame Shi in unrestrained delight. You said yes. I am the luckiest person alive. She closed her eyes, her long eyelashes fluttering softly. Madame Shi sat beside the bed, holding her daughter's hand, watching her peaceful sleeping face as she slowly hummed the gentle tune, patting Shi Yin's stomach rhythmically. Yet her gaze drifted sorrowfully toward the window, her thoughts wandering far away to her missing biological child. She failed to notice Shi Yin's eyes slide open quietly the moment her back was turned, cold disdain and quiet resentment flickering across her features. After a long while, steady, even breathing filled the room as Shirin pretended to fall into a deep slumber. Madame Shi stared at her adopted daughter's face with lingering melancholy before rising quietly from the bedside. She rubbed her stiff legs and slipped out of the room with careful, silent steps. How is Yin doing? Is she unwell? Sher's father stood outside the door, looking worn and fatigued. He gripped his wife's hand anxiously, his gaze fixed on the bedroom with obvious concern. She only caught a minor chill from the wind. "I will boil ginger soup for her to drink while it is still hot," Madame Sher replied with a quiet sigh. "Ian has only known a comfortable life with us for a few short years. If our family is sent to the countryside for re-education soon, her delicate constitution will never withstand the harsh living conditions there. She will be devastated once she learns the news." She nudged her husband's arm urgently. "One of your old military comrades owes you a favor, does he not? I heard his son holds a reputable military position in the garrison. Could you arrange for Ian to marry him? She would be safe living with her husband on the military compound, and we could set our minds at ease instead of forcing her to endure hardship alongside us." "Do not worry," Sher's father reassured her firmly. "I sent a letter to my comrade the moment we received word of the accusation against our household, proposing a marriage arrangement between his son and Ian. A reply should arrive within the next couple of days. Station wives live a far more stable life than rural re-education camps. My only worry is that Ian might resist the arrangement." "This is wonderful news." "I will break the news to her gently," Madame Sher exclaimed, tears of relief welling in her eyes. Her mood quickly soured into bitter rage. "Who could have filed these false accusations against us? If I ever find out who is responsible, I will demand justice for our family's ruined reputation. Every claim made in the report was completely fabricated. Our household has never maintained any contact with foreign entities whatsoever." "Keep your voice down." Sher's father covered her mouth abruptly, shooting her a stern warning glance to stop her impassioned ranting. The couple's figures faded down the hallway. Only then did Shireen open her eyes fully, a satisfied smirk tugging at her lips as she rolled over and sank comfortably into the soft mattress. Approximately 24 hours later, Shi Jingwei stumbled off the train platform after an agonizing 16-hour hard-seat journey. Her clothes saturated with all manner of unpleasant odors from the packed carriage. She gulped down fresh outdoor air greedily the second she stepped out of the station building. She felt incredibly grateful the trip had only lasted 16 hours. She had been sold to Jinan. If her original body had been trafficked to remote provinces in the southwest, the train ride would have dragged on for 3 or 4 full days. To make matters worse, the village party secretary had bought her a non-window seat. She endured overwhelming foot odor for most of the trip, with the stench of chicken manure drifting through the carriage for the latter half of the journey. The nausea had been so intense she had not dared take out the meat buns stored in her spatial space to eat. Finally, this ordeal is over. Shi Jingwei did not head straight for the Shi family residence. Repulsed by the grime and stench clinging to her skin and clothes, she hailed an illegal private car at the roadside. "Take me to the nearest guest house." She rushed to take a hot shower the moment she checked into her room and changed into clean casual clothing she had stored from her previous modern life. Feeling human again, she summoned meat buns and meat patties out of her spatial storage to eat. As she ate, she recalled the exact timeline of the Shi family's property confiscation described in the original novel. The incident was due to unfold within the coming week, so there was no urgent rush. Once she finished her meal, she slept soundly to recover from her exhausting travel ordeal. Refreshed after her rest, she headed straight for the department store the moment she woke up, determined to stock up on daily necessities. She could not bear to skimp on her food supplies, especially since the re-education site in the southwest region lacked access to most scarce ration goods. The journey from Shanghai to the southwest would take 3 to 4 days by train, so thorough preparation was essential. "I will hold off on purchasing bulk supplies for the time being." Nearly every commodity in this era required corresponding ration coupons, and her personal stock of coupons was extremely limited. Her ideal plans were quickly grounded by harsh reality. Shi Jingwei experienced firsthand how difficult life could be without adequate ration vouchers. She had abandoned all hope of stocking up on goods. She did not even hold enough coupons for a lavish feast at the state-run restaurant. She splurged on a hearty meal once, only to drain most of her available coupons. The food itself was absolutely exquisite: fluffy steamed rice, tender fish, fragrant shredded pork, rich braised pork belly cooked until fall-apart tender, and crispy braised lion's head meatballs. After surviving on monotonous rations in the post-apocalyptic wasteland for years, the authentic savory dishes were an absolute feast for her taste buds. She ordered more than 10 dishes for herself alone, eating voraciously until her stomach bulged, oil glistening at the corners of her mouth. The other diners stared at her in stunned silence, silently giving her thumbs up in admiration. Her extravagant feast left her completely out of ration coupons. For the following few days, she settled for street snacks, fried dough sticks, soybean milk, glutinous rice cakes, and salty tofu pudding. Still, these snacks taste wonderful enough to satisfy my appetite. The thin wrappers and hearty fillings of these wontons are divine. I have not tasted anything this good in ages. 3 days slipped by in the blink of an eye. Shi Jingwei sat beside a wonton stall, spooning wontons into her mouth while sucking on a sweet cotton candy, thoroughly enjoying the peaceful moment. A single bowl contained merely 10 wontons, far too little to fill her stomach, so she ordered 4 bowls in total. Once she had eaten her fill, she hailed another unlicensed private car and headed toward the Shi family mansion, following the geographical memories inherited from her original body. The Shi household. A storm was brewing. Every member of the Shi family sat tensely on the large sofas in the ground floor living room, holding their breath and not daring to make a sound. A wall clock ticked steadily at the center of the hall, each tick striking sharply against everyone's nerves. Oppressive tension weighed heavy on each person's chest, a boulder lodged in their lungs that made breathing a struggle. Madame Shi held the weeping Shi tightly in her arms, patting her back gently in comfort. "It's all right, don't be afraid." Shi buried her face in her mother's bosom, her whole body trembling violently from fright. Off to one side sat a handsome man confined to a wheelchair. He appeared utterly indifferent to the chaos, staring silently out the window without a single word. At long last, the clock hands pointed straight to 12 o'clock, the very moment the inspection squad was scheduled to arrive. Rapid, heavy footsteps echoed nearby, and members of the inspection squad descended upon the residence with imposing menace. "Captain Shi, come out now. Do not force us to take harsh measures." The squad leader held up an official warrant stamped with a bright red seal. With a flick of his wrist, his men formed a tight cordon, sealing off the entire mansion with no room for escape. Shi Bingchang, the family patriarch, seemed to age decades in an instant. He rose slowly from his seat, casting a wistful glance over every furnishing in the room before walking outside alongside his family. "How could they get here so soon? We were supposed to have until tomorrow." Shi Jingwei hopped down from her flatbed tricycle and witnessed the standoff unfolding before her eyes. She could not afford to linger. If she hesitated any longer, all the Shi family assets would be seized and confiscated. Shi's parents owned a considerable collection of historical ration coupons. Moreover, Madame Shi's ancestors had once ruled as fortress lords, building fortified stockades to station troops, run businesses, and acquire vast tracts of land, amassing an immense fortune over generations. After the founding of the People's Republic, most of the ancestral fortress was nationalized, leaving only a side courtyard to Madame Shi. Outsiders merely took the compound for an ordinary old dwelling. Even Madame Shi herself never knew a hidden basement, constructed by the original fortress lord beneath the firewood shed in the backyard, actually existed. Lined with blue brick vaulted ceilings and built with moisture-proof rammed earth, the space had remained dry and intact for decades, holding the bulk of the family's hidden wealth. Madame Shi had always dismissed tales of the hidden vault as an old family anecdote she'd told the original host body in this world. It was only during this impending confiscation that the truth of the basement was uncovered, much to the original female lead Shi Yin's utter shock and fury. In the original novel, Shi Yin awakened a spatial storage ability later on and snuck into the inspection squad's storage to reclaim all the valuables. A faint smirk tugged at Shi Jingyue's lips. That was the original heroine's golden finger ability. She intended to seize it for herself. These treasures were the key to securing permanent, unrestricted access to ample food supplies for her future. More critically, the vault housed antique fortress armaments, vintage short firearms, ceremonial blades, and other weaponry. If the inspection squad discovered these artifacts, the family's charges would be severely aggravated. Shi Jingwei gauged her distance to the blue brick courtyard of the Shi residence. Less than 5 meters separated her from the outer wall. It was more than enough distance to act. Focusing her mind, she pinpointed the rough location of the underground basement and teleported directly into the hidden vault in an instant. She had expected the stagnant, mildewed stench of a sealed underground space, yet the air was pleasantly cool and dry, scented with fine dust, the mild, sharp aroma of camphor wood used for pest control, the faint soapy fragrance of aged silk fabrics, mixed with a subtle dry lime tang. The basement itself was modest in size but meticulously partitioned, with goods neatly sorted into left and right sections. On the left sat over a dozen locked iron crates. Even without prying them open, Sure Jingwei could tell their contents were extraordinarily valuable. Stacked atop the iron crates stood 4 large camphor wood chests. The right side was lined with earthen jars, their openings tightly sealed with yellow mud. There was no time to inspect each item individually. She swept every visible object into her personal spatial storage without hesitation. In the blink of an eye, the once crammed basement stood completely empty, her voice echoing faintly off the bare masonry walls when she spoke softly. Worried she might overlook a concealed cubby, she swept the entire basement with her mental perception. She soon uncovered a sealed side chamber. Inside, wooden shelves were lined with rare medicinal herbs including Pylos antler and cordyceps, stockpiled by the fortress lord to endure wartime shortages. Without pause, she stowed all the medicinal stock into her spatial storage. The entire heist took less than 60 seconds. Time was scarce and her mission pressing. She teleported once more, reappearing inside the main hall of the residence. A large portrait of Chairman Mao hung prominently on the wall facing her. She scanned the room quickly, a square 8 immortals table flanked by 2 grand armchairs against the wall, alongside a black lacquered antique wooden cabinet. Her mental sense pierced the cabinet's interior, revealing candy jars, cloth coupons, grain coupons, and an assortment of other ration supplies. She'd struck an enormous windfall. Everything went into her storage space. She moved into the bedrooms next. Concentrating her mental power, she cleared the rooms out in a swift, sweeping purge. Silk robes, brand-new bedding, wristwatches, bank books, and cash stored within the wardrobes vanished completely. She did not spare the kitchen either. Sickles, large iron woks, sacks of rice, dried chili peppers hanging from the ceiling beams, preserved wild vegetables. Every usable item was absorbed into her storage space in a thorough sweep akin to a locust swarm stripping a field bare. Her spatial storage held an enormous volume, so she had no need to hold back. She left only fixed furniture such as beds and cabinets, along with heavily worn worthless debris, and took everything else of value. If not for the risk of drawing immediate suspicion, she would have emptied the entire residence down to its foundations.